What is up to the transparency? So you're putting this out there, and that's what we're going to do. This is the Shanna Gardner, Jared Bridegan murder for hire, Jacksonville Beach. Shanna Gardner got Jose Baez to represent her. This was the bail hearing. The bail hearing is like a little mini evidentiary hearing, and it's very eye-opening, but it's a peek in kind of at the state's case. And so it's relevant. Those of you guys that want to be following along with this case, this is a great place to start because this is the first mega hearing that they had. And also after this hearing, Jose Baez was hot. I mean, hot. He accuses the lead investigator in this case, Detective Johns, of basically committing perjury and being inept. Fireworks have gone off in this case. Jose Baez is not having the police as well as the prosecutors pulling what he would say is antics. So again, at some point in this video, you're going to have a thought about it. Thumbs it up, thumbs it down, make yourself known. Also in the comment section, use it there. Let's get into it. Again, make yourself known if you are watching live chat or your phone. We always like to know where people are hanging out and watching. You don't have to be so specific that you dox yourself. A state will do. So here we go. Again, welcome to the transparency. We're going to have this on 1.5 speed. If I can do more, I will. Walking to the courtroom, there's Jose Baez. Shanna Gardner to the right.
All right.
This case is going to be a good one.
Thank you.
Will you see it?
Stipulating to the admission of all except two of the exhibits. Exhibit
Again, remember, this is going to be on 1.5 speed. They really don't walk that fast.
Ms. Jeffries, thank you for getting in contact. All right, can we handle some preliminary matters?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, are you okay with going forward without replying?
Yes, we'll wait Ms. Gardner's appearance for this.
I believe the state has given the court an evidence list. It has 22 exhibits on it.
it has 20 of them.
20, okay.
And I've spoken with defense counsel.
Use the microphone.
I love this judge.
Athens, on behalf of the state.
Thanks.
I have given defense counsel copies of the evidence list. I believe that they are stipulating to the admission of all except two of the exhibits. Exhibit J, which the state is by agreement not going to use for the purposes of this hearing. So that reflecting the evidence list is not entered. I'm sorry, that's exhibit L.
L not entered.
Yes, ma'am. They're also objecting to exhibit J, and the state intends to introduce this during the hearing.
Do you want to just get that number or do you want to renumber?
Whatever it is for the clerk.
Ms. Smith,
They haven't been numbered.
they have the number. Okay, then I'm just going to renumber and we can remark our exhibits. Okay, is that correct, Mr. Curdy?
Yes, Your Honor.
I marked them by letter preliminarily, just wrote them Mr. Curdy now.
All right.
So L will not be entered. And as to exhibit J, the state's prepared to make argument if the court is prepared to hear it. That would affect the numbering whether or not it's contained.
Are you requiring them to lay a foundation?
No, Judge, I mean, we believe that those, what they're trying to make, Your Honor, is a series of text messages between two individuals, KJ and a SL, I'll use initials. They don't involve Ms. Gardner. They're discussing what they believe Ms. Gardner needs, and their opinion and that discussion between two people without the involvement of Ms. Gardner is totally irrelevant to the purposes of this hearing. And frankly, it's hearsay that wouldn't even be admissible at a trial.
Okay.
Mayor, as a preliminary matter, this is a bond hearing under the pretrial detention statute and Arthur and its progeny. There are no rules of evidence the way there would apply at trial. Hearsay is allowed. This exhibit is relevant. The state would, number one, if we are proceeding under the rules of evidence, which don't apply to this particular proceeding.
Okay, this is a really important person in this hearing, and she's going to be a very important person in this trial. KJ. KJ is a friend of Shanna Gardner's. They're using her initials. I know her full name, but KJ. So what's the state came with for this bail hearing, like I said, it's like a little mini trial. And so they have 22 exhibits. And what they're trying to do is to keep Shanna Gardner from being out on bail bond. And so they put together 22 exhibits that they're going to use here today. The defense objected to a couple of them. One of them being what they're just talking about right now. It is a string of text messages between Shanna Gardner and KJ. And the defense is like, this is all hearsay. Why don't you bring KJ in here yourself and ask her what this stuff means versus you telling us what these text exchanges mean? I mean, and I have to agree with that. Like, it is hearsay. Why don't you just go get KJ? Okay. But you guys are going to find out at the end of this why they didn't go and get KJ. Okay. Again, KJ is a female friend of Shanna Gardner. And KJ is going to be instrumental in this case.
Proceeding. These are statements involving KJ, whom the state believes to be statements of a co-conspirator. They are relevant because exhibits I involve text messages between Ms. Gardner and her co-conspirator KJ that directly reference and relate to the messages in exhibit J, both temporally and subject matter. So these messages are being relayed between KJ and SL simultaneously with messages between KJ and Ms. Gardner involving topics of conversation. And the detective is going to testify to statements disclosed by KJ involving her conversations with Ms. Gardner about this information. So it is relevant to explain the context of Ms. Gardner's actual admissions and statements the state is introducing.
It's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no context.
Can we wait till the detective testifies? I'll make an appropriate objection at the time.
Okay, so I'm gonna hold that, okay?
Right there, the prosecution makes it known that the lead detective is going to be the one that is going to testify about these. And this is going to be very, very, it's basically going to blow up in Detective Johns' face. But we're going to get there. So, but how they plan on getting this in is through the testimony of Detective Johns, a lead investigator in this case.
Exhibits A through I will be marked sequentially 1 through 9. J, we are going to skip right now. K will be marked as composite 10. N will be marked as composite 11. N will be composite 12. O will be composite 13. P will be composite 14. Q will be 15. R will be 16. S will be 17. And we're going to hold on to J. Okay, you can remember.
By the way, I love
All right, and so is there any other issue?
No, Your Honor.
I love this judge. Love her.
Now that you have clarification from me as lawyers, is there a stipulation to the defense evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Your Honor, I do have an unopposed motion to determine confidentiality of 2 exhibits that I'll hand to the clerk for filing at this time. Those exhibits have been marked as 1 and 2. They are letters from a medical provider and a mental health provider.
All right, there's no objection to those.
Your Honor.
And Your Honor, I also have exhibit 3, which is a declaration of from Andrew Wagley, a Washington State lawyer, with an order of dismissal in the extradition case for Ms. Gardner. And exhibit 4 is an email from Hank Cox and Ms. Stifler. And exhibit 5 is a composite exhibit that includes excerpts from a purchase agreement and deeds for 2709 Ocean Drive, Jacksonville Beach.
No objection.
Okay, those will be so moved.
So right now they're just putting in their exhibits.
Defense exhibit 1 and 2 will be, I've granted the confidentiality, so they shall not be disclosed.
This one has one.
It's a pretty good one.
So they're putting in both of their exhibits on both sides.
Any other housekeeping matters?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
There you are.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
They assert are confidential. They assert are confidential in nature. They have sensitive information in it.
I believe this is what defense counsel emailed me about yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no objection for the attorney.
Okay, I'm sorry, we can come over.
And I know that WJST does it as well with their counsel yesterday as well.
Yes, thank you. I didn't mean to make you rush over.
When the court calls,
Okay,
She's awesome. I'm telling you, this judge is the slam.
I'm trying to find the docket line of the defense motion. Ms. Smith, do you have it?
All right, here we go.
So the state filed a motion for pretrial detention, and I just found it. And then we're also, for record purposes, holding the hearing on defense motion filed on docket line 70. The state indicated that they're going to go first.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the state can call the first witness.
Trustee Paulson, Dr. Chris Jones.
All right, the first witness, Detective Johns.
Do you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
This is a really good look into the case, guys. I'm telling you, this is where you're going to start. This is the first mega
Good
hearing.
afternoon, Detective.
Go ahead.
Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Christopher Johns.
And Detective Jones, what agency are you employed with?
I work at the Jackson Beach Police Department.
And how many years have you been, I'm going to call it Jack's Beach PD for time's sake while we speak. How long have you been employed with Jack's Beach PD?
A little over 5.5 years.
And prior to your employment there, could you describe to the court your education and job experience?
I mostly worked in the financial industry, mostly consumer banking and investment management. I held a stockbroker's license as well as a firm principal's license, and I'm currently registered with the SEC as an investment advisor.
And with the Jacksonville Beach Police Department, what's your current role?
I'm a detective in our General Investigations Unit, which handles pretty much everything with the exception of vice or drug crimes.
So that would include homicides, armed robberies, major crimes, all the way down the line. And do you have any special training or experience to become a detective in General Investigations Unit?
On top of the police academy, I've attended approximately 300 hours of specialized training in criminal investigations or crime scene investigations, about 120 of that being for death investigations and homicides.
And you are the lead investigator, lead detective who was assigned to investigate the homicide of Jared Brightigan, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to talk to you a little bit about your initial involvement in this case. February 16, 2022, were you dispatched to a scene in which Jared Brightigan was the victim?
Yes, ma'am.
And where in Jacksonville, Duval County was this homicide scene?
I was dispatched to Jacksonville Drive and Sanctuary Boulevard, which is it's really an on-ramp to JTB and also serves as an entrance into a neighborhood called the Sanctuary.
And when you arrived on scene, was Jared Brightigan already deceased?
Yes, ma'am.
There was a child in the vehicle with Jared. And I don't want to use her name because she's a minor child, but are her initials BB?
Yes,
And what was her relationship to the deceased victim, Jared Brightigan?
it was Jared's daughter,
Do you know approximately at the time of your arrival on scene how old she would have been?
about 2.5.
When you arrived on scene, where was BB located?
When I arrived on scene, a good Samaritan had grabbed her from her car seat, which was in the back of the vehicle, and taken them to their vehicle and covered her with blankets.
Do you recall what BB's demeanor was like when you encountered her on scene that night?
She was very upset, crying, scared, obviously.
And the Good Samaritans relayed to you that they had taken her out of her car seat. Did you have the opportunity to observe Jared Brightigan's vehicle on scene that night?
I did.
And Jared himself was not in the vehicle.
Correct.
Can you describe for the court, in relation to where BB was seated in her car seat, what damage you observed to the vehicle?
In relation to where her car seat was, she was in the back, but at least 2 rounds struck the interior of the vehicle. One of them striking the bottom of the window seal and shattering the window. That would have been just in front of her car seat.
And I guess I didn't ask this specifically, but Jared Brightigan was pronounced deceased by the medical examiner, cause of death being gunshot wounds.
Yes, ma'am.
And from your review, were there projectiles that entered into the vehicle in which BB was in her car seat?
There were.
Did she make any statements to you or other investigators with the Jacksonville Beach PD that night?
She made mention of hearing a loud sound, boom, boom, saying that she had to take her shoes off to cover her ears. And she made mention that her daddy was sick and was on the ground and needed a doctor.
I want to skip ahead in your investigation. You obviously did many, many, many hours of investigation, many interviews in the days and weeks and months following your response to the scene.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you eventually were able to make an arrest in this case for the murder of Jared Brightigan?
Yes, we made 3 arrests.
And who did you arrest?
Henry Tennant, Shanna Gardner, and Mario Fernandez Saldana.
I want to speak for a moment about Henry Tennant. Henry Tennant was arrested and charged with the murder of Jared Brightigan, including the discharge of the firearm that caused his death.
Yes, ma'am.
And to your knowledge, has Henry Tennant pled guilty to his role in the murder of Jared Brightigan?
He did.
Were you present when Mr. Tennant gave what's called a sworn statement in conjunction with his plea, which outlined his involvement in Jared's murder?
Yes, I was.
What did he advise you about how it was that he came to be involved in Jared's murder?
Mr. Tennant was a tenant at one of their rental properties, and he had been approached by Mr. Fernandez a number of times, asking him if he would participate in his homicide. Mr. Tennant stated that he initially denied Mr. Fernandez's request. However, once Mr. Fernandez had agreed that they would, being Shanna and Mario, would invest $150,000 into a pallet business, he agreed to participate.
Okay, now I want to go back and ask some follow-up questions about that. When you say that Henry Tennant said Mario Fernandez requested him to participate in a homicide, what specifically was that conversation, according to Mr. Tennant?
He stated that in exchange for the money, that Mr. Fernandez would provide a firearm, and then they would contrive a plan. Initially, the plan was to kidnap Mr. Brightigan and then take him to another location and murder him.
And did Mr. Tennant advise as to what, if anything, Mario Fernandez Saldana said about why he wanted to murder Jared Brightigan?
They had initially planned, or were planning this in late 2021, and then after returning from a Hawaii trip in February, Mr. Fernandez approached Mr. Tennant and stated that this needed to happen this week. So we've been, and if he didn't get it done, that his marriage was going to end.
Did Henry Tennant know Jared Brightigan?
No, he did not.
Had he ever seen him before the night of the homicide on February 16, 2022?
No, in fact, there were 2 instances where Mr. Fernandez took Mr. Tennant in an attempt to show him Mr. Brightigan, and both of those were failed attempts.
Other than the relationship of Mr. Tennant being a tenant of Mario Fernandez Saldana and Shanna Gardner's rental company, were you able to find in your investigation any other link or connection between Henry Tennant and Jared Brightigan?
None.
In your conversations with Henry Tennant, was Mr. Tennant able to, even before this night, describe what Jared Brightigan looked like?
Not at all.
What type of car he drove?
No.
Did he know on the night that he murdered Jared Brightigan that BB would be in the vehicle with him?
He did not know that.
Detective, I'm going to draw your attention to a screen that's in your witness box. Some of these exhibits have been entered by agreement of both parties. I'm going to start with Exhibit 1. Detective, what is this?
These are articles of organization for a limited liability company named First Choice Home Rentals LLC. And the second document is an annual filing for that same LLC.
Okay, so when you say that annual filing on State's Exhibit 2, this would be the annual report of First Choice Home Rentals LLC.
Correct.
Going back to State's Exhibit 1, you have some familiarity with this from your prior experience. Who are the title holders or principals on these articles of organization?
Both Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez.
Okay, so you're going to sit there and tell me that 3/28/2019, the effective date for this limited liability company shall be. Okay, so that's the date I wanted. 3/28/2019. Shanna and Mario. Okay, and that. Okay.
Fernandez are listed as managing members, or what would be considered owners of the LLC.
And the LLC is First Choice Home Rentals. What was the business of this LLC as incorporated?
The business was established to manage their rental property holdings.
And these are some of the articles, the full exhibit the court will have, but under Article 5, the electronic signator on this Articles of Incorporation is Shanna Gardner. Is that correct?
I don't recall, to be honest with you.
Moving to State's Exhibit 2, This document is an annual report. What does that mean?
This is just a document that's filed every year to basically let the state know this is still an active company and that to make any changes to the ownership or management of the company.
And this was filed in the upper right-hand corner, January 28th, 2022, which was a few weeks before the murder of Jared Bradigan. And again, at the bottom, who are the still owners or signatories on this LLC?
The listed owners are Shannon Gardner and Mark Fernandez.
I'm turning your attention to State's Composite Exhibit 3. Detective, can you describe for the court what these documents are?
This is a bank statement from Navy Federal Credit Union that held the account for First Choice Home Rentals.
And in the exhibits the court will receive, you obtained these records via subpoena, and they are accompanied by certification records from Navy Federal.
Yes, ma'am.
And there's a red box here. Can you describe for the court what that is indicating?
The red box is indicating a transfer from a separate checking account also held in a federal credit union. In this instance, it's stating that on March 15th, $5,000 was transferred from the Shannon Gardner Irrevocable Trust account at Navy Federal into the First Choice Home Rentals account.
And this is another exhibit or another page on Composite Exhibit 3, again showing that the First Choice Home Rentals LLC was getting, appears to be monthly transfers from the Shannon Gardner Irrevocable Trust.
There was another transfer in April of the same amount.
And we'll come back to that trust in a moment. I'm going to move to
Okay, so Shannon Gardner has a trust, and on 3/15/2022, which would have been about a month after the murder, $5,000 went from the trust account to this Navy Federal Credit Union account. Okay, transfer from checking the Shannon Gardner Irrevocable Trust. And it went into that business checking account. All right. And then again on 4/26/2022, again, another 5,000. And these were just transfers from the trust to the checking. And it's important to know that you guys are going to find out that Mario Saldana had access to that trust account. Okay. He could transfer stuff too.
move to State's Exhibit D. What records are we looking at here?
This is a PNC bank statement for Mr. Henry Tennant's account.
Composite Exhibit 4. In your discussions with Mr. Tennant involving how he became a part of this scheme to murder Jared Bradigan, you mentioned that he was promised a payment. Can you give us any more details about what Mr. Tennant advised you that he was promised and how he received this money?
He was promised $150,000 in the form of investment into a pallet business.
And was this payment going to come in a lump sum or in installments?
So it'd be installment payments.
Was there any discussion of why that would be the case?
As to not arise any suspicion.
And moving through Composite Exhibit 4, documents for Mr. Tennant, and a portion of his standard checking statement. Okay. I'm drawing your attention to the screen now. There's a red box. Can you describe for the court what is indicated by that on this checking statement?
The statement is indicating a deposit for $2,000 on March 28th, which would be in line with the check that's in the top right-hand corner.
And this is March 28th, 2022.
Correct.
This would be about a month and some time after the murder of Jared Bradigan.
That's correct.
And then a second red box.
Correct.
Describe what this indicates.
This is a check that was deposited on the next day on March 29th for $3,000, also written from First Choice Home Rentals.
Okay. And on the next slide, we see the final check and final box. Can you describe what we're seeing here?
This check's on April 6th for $5,000 written to Henry Tennant from First Choice Home Rentals.
And in the subject line, it says Kickstarter, good luck. Can you describe for the court, based on your conversations with Mr. Tennant, what this check was actually for?
Mr. Tennant stated this was the first of many payments that was supposed to be an investment into his pallet company, which was actually payment for the homicide.
Now, the prior checks, the $3,000 and $4,000 were marked for landscaping and roofing. What did Mr. Tennant say about those payments?
He stated that those payments were for legitimate work that he'd done on the rental property on Potomac Avenue.
So this was the first and the only payment he actually received from First Choice Home Rentals for the contract killing of Jared Bradigan.
Correct.
I want to talk about Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez, your development of them as suspects in this case. When you were investigating the murder of Jared Bradigan, were you able to eliminate through investigative techniques other potential suspects?
In the beginning, we really didn't have any suspects. We look at everyone who might be close to the family, any relatives, spouse. And so through various techniques, we do start to kind of eliminate people who just had no reason or no capability of doing it.
During your investigation, did you do search warrants and subpoenas into Jared Bardigan and those in his immediate inner circle?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you download Jared Bardigan's phones, laptops, work phones, personal devices?
We did.
And you reviewed all those records?
We did.
Did you get financial records and call detail records for Jared Bardigan?
We did.
Did you get them for his wife, Kirsten Bardigan?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you get them from many people close to him and his family and inner circle?
We did.
Was there any indication through your investigation that anybody, putting aside Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez Saldana, had any problems with Jared Bardigan or any motive to carry out the homicide of Jared Bardigan?
No, there was not.
There's no debts that he was hiding,
Nope.
no evidence of drug use that he was hiding.
By all accounts, Mr. Bardigan was a very boring person who lived a very close and religious family life. He had no debts, had plenty of money in the bank, no indications of gambling or drug habits, no affairs, and these were all things that we checked for.
And you even spoke to people who even had minor arguments with Jared over the years, just to check them out and clear them.
Correct.
So during your investigation, at some point, did you start hearing from people that you should be looking at Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez Saldana as suspects?
Almost immediately.
And how did you get information directly to look into these individuals?
We had several people come forward who shared stories that they had heard over the years of Ms. Gardner stating that she hated Jared and could not stand the fact that she had to share custody with him and that she wanted him dead.
And you heard this unsolicited from numerous people, not just one person.
Correct.
When you heard this information, did you investigate into the past history of Shanna Gardner and Jared Bardigan?
Yes, ma'am.
And they had gone through a pretty acrimonious divorce.
Correct.
And can you briefly describe for the court what that investigation uncovered for you?
They were divorced in 2015 and pretty much consistently between 2015 up until Jared's death, they were in court at least annually. Pretty much every aspect of the child custody was litigated and fought through mediation. It was to the degree that they no longer had any type of verbal communication about their children. Everything was done either in writing or through an attorney.
And from your investigation, were they even able to be in the same room together?
No,
How did they co-parent?
through the court.
When they went to the school, did they have separate parent-teacher conferences?
It was indicated that they had separate parent-teacher conferences, they would have separate doctor's appointments, or only one of them would attend the doctor's appointments. There was virtually nothing that they did together as far as the kids were.
During your investigation, you spoke with Mr. Fernandez Saldana and Ms. Gardner. Did they tell you and corroborate this information that there was this bad relationship between them as co-parents?
Yes, much of this information came directly from them.
And from your investigation, can you describe to the court some of what you uncovered about what Ms. Gardner was trying to do through the court system in terms of Jared's ability?
So Mario and Shanna Gardner, they were both interviewed at least twice. Mario went to the police department to say like he wanted to talk to them. So that happened on more than one occasion, twice, both people. That's in the discovery. I have the entire discovery minus anything that the prosecution has not turned over to the defense. As well as I don't have like graphic pictures or anything like that. So what he just said right there when he's saying that he heard this directly from them, that is true about the divorce. But it's a little misleading, if you ask me, because I have the paperwork. I have 900 pages of the whole entire divorce. Every single thing to do with their divorce I have as well.
Ability to participate in co-parenting.
Ms. Gardner was attempting to initiate a quote-unquote social investigation or a BCF investigation in an effort to gain, if not majority custody, sole custody over the children so that she did not have to involve Mr. Bardigan in custody issues.
What kind of things were they disagreeing over in terms of child rearing?
Everything from schedules to who could be around when the children were there, and then to more severe things such as medication, medical devices that one of the twins needed. There was little that wasn't litigated.
What about religion?
One of a big contention, which I don't think it's ever made it to litigation, Mr. Bradigan did state that he wanted to raise his children in the Mormon faith, and Shannon did not want to raise the kids. At some point, one of the twins indicated that she wanted to be baptized into the Church of Latter-day Saints, and this was very troubling for Ms. Gardner.
And when we all hear that, can you put into perspective for the court how big of an issue religion was to Jared Bradigan?
He was a devout member of his church, a very faithful person, so it would have been an extreme issue for him.
I also want to talk about Shanna Gardner's financial motivations. Earlier, we saw records from the Shanna Gardner Irrevocable Trust. Can you describe for the court, have you seen the trust documents yourself?
I have.
Can you describe for the court what the trust is and what it was, I guess, created to do?
The trust would operate as a separate entity. The trust was funded by Ms. Gardner's parents, and it was a way that they could essentially give money for the benefit of Ms. Gardner and the twins that would not be considered her personal income. And so therefore, Mr. Bradigan would not have any access to those funds. In this case, the grantors were Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, and the trustee was Margaret Fernandez.
So the trust not only was something that people with a lot of money do with their money, it was also partially motivated by wanting to prevent that money from being litigated in the courts between Jared Bradigan and Shanna Gardner.
That's correct.
Had they had a history of litigating finances in addition to all the child custody issues?
Yes, during their divorce, their financial situation, especially their marital home, was heavily litigated.
And I'm turning to a portion of State's Composite Exhibit 6. Detective Johns, this is from the trust document itself. Can you describe for the court what this clause means?
This clause states that once Ms. Gardner has no more legal entanglements with her ex-husband, Mr. Bradigan, she may elect to serve as trustee of her trust, essentially giving her control of the assets inside the trust.
At the time of Jared Bradigan's death, who was the acting trustee of the trust?
Margaret Fernandez.
There you go.
I want to turn your attention.
So right there, Mario Fernandez had controlling access over this account. Okay. It's really, really important in my opinion. Obviously, I believe 100% that Henry Tenon committed the crime. And I am not sold that Shanna Gardner was involved. And I'll explain my reasonings as we proceed through this this trial. And a lot of it has to do with, well, I'll explain that later.
And to what we discussed earlier, that you actually spoke with Mr. Fernandez Aldana and Ms. Gardner in the course of your investigation. How many times did you speak with Shanna Gardner after the homicide of Jared Bradigan?
I spoke to her twice.
And let's talk about that first interview. Did that occur March 1st, 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you speak with Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez Aldana at the Jacksonville Beach Police Station?
I did.
Okay. Did you ask them to come to the police station and speak with you?
Initially, yes, I did.
And were you speaking to many, many other people as you testified earlier? At that point, you had no suspects.
We were doing dozens of interviews.
What was the purpose of these conversations with them? Were they custodial interrogations? Were they under suspicion at that time?
Absolutely not. At that time, we were just really collecting information about who Jared was, anyone that he might have associated with. We wanted to basically know everything we could about him. Really, he was kind of the focus at that point in our investigation.
Well, what did you advise Ms. Gardner was the purpose of your conversation with her on March 1st, 2022?
I stated at that time we were doing something that we refer to as victimology.
And that would be a background investigation into the victim, in this case, Jared Bradigan.
Correct.
When you spoke with her, did you speak with her in what's called the soft interview room at Jacksonville Beach Police Station?
Correct. We have two interview areas. One of them would be what someone would maybe describe as an interrogation room. There's no soft furniture. It's very hard, very cold. This is just a room with a couch and a couple of chairs, and it's where we conduct our interview, really just more interviews versus interrogations.
And Ms. Gardner was brought to that room for her interview,
Correct.
just like every other witness you spoke to in this case.
That's correct.
And during that conversation,
Without a lawyer, right?
just a brief overview
She had no problem
of
with
her
that.
demeanor and how that interview sort of began.
She was very forthcoming. It was a very typical interview. She was very talkative and provided a lot of context without a whole lot of questions being asked.
And you said provide a lot of context. What was the general tone of that context she provided?
The general tone of it was, I don't really know a whole lot about Jared now, but I will tell you how he was when we were married and what our divorce was like. Essentially, he was manipulative and caused her a lot of trauma. And then moving on to, we had a terrible divorce and then talking about how that affected the children. And so,
Did she bring up at any point that Jared Bardigan was at all abusive towards her, physically or verbally?
she stated that he was in fact not physically or verbally abusive.
And during this conversation, part of the reason you spoke to her is that she and her husband, Mario Fernandez, and their children, her children, Baby and Elby, were the last people to see Jared Bardigan alive.
That's correct.
And did she give you some indication as to where everybody was in the house during the time of the homicide?
She stated that when the kids were dropped off by Mr. Bradigan, Mario was asleep and she was cooking with her friends in the kitchen.
Did she say where he was sleeping?
I don't know that she stated that where he was sleeping during her interview, but he indicated that he was on the couch.
Did you have a second, and you also interviewed Mario Fernandez Saldana separately, but on the same date as this interview?
Correct.
I want to jump forward, April 15th, 2022, did you have a second interview with Ms. Gardner?
I did.
And how was it that you came to interview her a second time?
At that point, we were not anticipating having a second interview. We were actually approached by Mr. Fernandez. He asked if they could come by. They were receiving a lot of media scrutiny or people from their neighborhood complaining, basically accusing them of being involved in this. So Mr. Fernandez specifically wanted to know if this was something that we were encouraging or that if we were behind it. We indicated that we were not behind that. And then he just wanted to vent his frustration to what was going on. After speaking with him, we asked if Ms. Gardner wanted to come by and basically do the same thing, and she agreed to come speak with us.
Like the first interview, was this what we would call a soft interview or a custodial interrogation?
It was a soft interview.
Same interview room with the couches,
Correct.
no reading of Miranda rights, no questioning of her as a suspect.
Correct.
During this interview, describe her demeanor.
This demeanor, she was much more upset, but she was upset because she felt like she was being attacked in the media or on social media, really. And she did not feel safe leaving her home because people were recognizing her and they were basically blaming her for the homicide.
In this particular interview, did you ask her any questions?
No, not at all.
Did she do most of the talking
She didn't.
unprompted?
Yes.
You did ask her a question about whether she had any theories about what happened to Jared.
Towards the end of the interview, we asked if she had any theories about what she thought might have happened.
Did she?
She provided some.
And let's start there. What did she say she believed happened to Jared Bardigan?
She said that maybe it was a drug deal gone wrong or a gang initiation, and then she stated that we should look into Kirsten Bradigan.
What did she say about it being a drug deal gone wrong? What made her think that that was a possibility as conveyed to you?
She said that she had heard from friends that Sanctuary Boulevard was where you go to buy drugs in Jackson Beach.
And you're a general investigations detective with the Jacksonville Beach Police Department. Based on your knowledge and your years with the force, is that true?
I've never heard that.
What about, you mentioned gangs. What did she say about gangs?
She said that she'd heard that some gangs do initiations by doing drive-by shootings like this.
Okay, and in your experience with the Jacksonville Beach Police Department, have you all ever had a gang-related drive-by shooting initiation case involving the murder of a father in a vehicle with his child at 7:50 p.m.?
I'm not aware of any of them.
In general, do you get many gang initiation shootings in Jacksonville Beach?
I'm not aware of any.
Lastly, what did she tell you about Kirsten Bradigan?
Just that we should look into her as a suspect for the homicide.
Did she give you any reasons?
Not that I can recall this one.
All right, so she gave you these theories to potentially investigate. Presumably she was trying to be helpful.
Presumably.
Did she ever mention that you all should investigate Mario Fernandez Aldana?
No.
Did she ever mention any conversations she had had with Mario Fernandez Aldana about killing Jared Bardigan?
No.
Did she ever mention someone by the name of Henry Tennant?
She did not.
Did she ever mention anything about knowledge of a vehicle that looked like the one in the news release that Jacksonville Beach put out?
No.
Did she ever mention to you that people might come forward saying that she had said she wanted Jared Bardigan dead?
No.
Did she ever mention to you that people may come forward saying that either she or Mario Fernandez Aldana had talked in the past about hiring a hitman to kill Jared Bardigan?
No.
Was that your last contact with Ms. Gardner?
Yes, it was.
Now, after that point, you began to develop leads in your investigation, and you began to look at some point at Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez Aldana's suspects.
That's correct.
And you zeroed in on Henry Tennant and were able to identify him as a person of interest, perhaps the shooter.
Correct.
And after his arrest, you were able to obtain evidence further into his involvement, as well as the involvement of Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez Aldana.
That's correct.
I want to go through some of what your investigation revealed after you last spoke with Ms. Gardner.
All right, this is going to be interesting.
And for the court's information, in the state's exhibit, there's a composite 7. It's an extraction report.
Right here, this is, oh, they put her name up there, idiots. Kim Jensen, there you go. Shanna Gardner is in the blue, Jensen's in the green.
Of a cell phone belonging to a woman named Kim Jensen. Detective Johns, who is Kim Jensen in relation to Ms. Gardner?
Kim Jensen was
Okay, these are 2015 text messages, you guys. These are from 2015. This is really, really important to understand that these are text messages from 2015. Okay, Jared was murdered in 2022.
was a lady that Miss Gardner met when she moved to Jacksonville. They were a member of the same ward or church, and they became very good friends, by all means, best friends.
Did their friendship begin before Jared Brightigan and Ms. Gardner were divorced?
No, yeah, their friendship did begin before the divorce, correct?
So she knew her when she being Ms. Jensen, knew Ms. Gardner when she was married to Jared Brightigan.
Yes, that's correct. And in fact, she knew Jared longer than she knew Miss Gardner.
Based on your investigation, we see your text messages. At some point, did you obtain a cell phone download of Kim Jensen's phone?
We did.
And was there contact between Ms. Jensen and Ms. Gardner?
There was extensive contact on a daily basis between the two of them,
For how long?
at least going back to 2015.
And how frequent was their contact with each other?
It was numerous times a day, phone calls, text messages,
Voice notes?
all kinds of things.
And from your review, not relevant to the homicide necessarily, but for context, your review of their contact, do they seem to have a very close and open relationship?
It would certainly appear that way.
They talk about the most intimate details of their lives,
Yes,
the most mundane details of their lives.
yes.
So we're looking at your state's composite exhibit 8. These are text messages on Ms. Jensen's phone that you found between her and Shanna Gardner dating back to 2015. And we're going to start there and work our way forward to 2022. I know it's difficult to read. Can you please describe for the court the conversation, tone, and tenor between Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen regarding Jared that began around this time period?
The context of this particular chat chain is Shanna telling Ms. Jensen that Matt is ready to come over there and to talk to him, meaning Mr. Brightigan. She said it would not get physical, and maybe then moves on to basically say, you know, that they maybe encourage it to become physical at some point.
Ms. Stifler, what did you identify this as?
This would be state's composite exhibit 8.
8, okay, thank you.
Sorry, my computer decided to reset its password in the middle of this.
Okay.
In 2015, what was the status of Shanna Gardner and Jared Brightigan's relationship?
In the beginning of 2015, they were still married and they did eventually divorce in 2015.
Moving on to page 2 of state's composite exhibit 8, more text between Ms. Gardner and Kim Jensen. What are they talking about here?
Says Matt was ready to come over here today and talk to him. It wouldn't get physical yet, but I tell him if these things happen X, Y, and Z, then A, B, and C will happen to him. And if he calls the cops, Matt would know, and A, B, C would happen. He said, I tell him he can thank the beautiful woman he's leeching off of that he is even still alive, because if it were up to him, he would have disappeared months ago. I told him your comment about the casserole, ha ha ha. We both had a good laugh.
Okay, then Ms. Jensen replies, and she talks at some point in this text here about funeral potatoes. Did that phrase become relevant to your investigation?
It did. There were two phrases that kind of were a continuation during all of their text messages. One of those referred to as the casserole, also aka funeral potatoes, or then there was the phrase of doing magic. Sorry.
So sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Let's talk about the funeral potatoes casserole. Did these words, were they used frequently in conversations between Shanna Gardner and Kim Jensen?
Yes, they were.
And in what context were they used?
In reference to the death of Jared.
Funeral casserole and something potatoes.
So there's more text here about funeral potatoes. These are, in fairness, everybody blows off steam when they're mad at their assessment.
Absolutely.
Okay. But at some point, did these texts continue and escalate to the point where they became significant to your investigation?
There was a continuation of this type of texting between them throughout their entire relationship that we were aware of, starting in 2015 through at least 2021. And I would say that the messages get much more vulgar than this.
So here we have, again, on state's composite exhibit 8, text messages from 2015.
Right back though in the next screen that they were just on, it said Shanna Gardner says, "P.S. Matt would never do that though."
Shanna Gardner saying, I would happily watch them give him the lethal objection. They're talking about they would love to see him get the death penalty and they can make a casserole. And moving on, again, it states composite exhibit 8, more text messages. And in these ones, there's a discussion. Can you describe to the court where this discussion develops?
These are essentially theories of what they could do to, Ms. Jensen refers to Jared as stupid.
Okay, so stupid, and we'll see that in other text messages. That was a nickname that Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen used to refer to Jared Brady.
Correct.
So what direction does this conversation take?
It's essentially just more about ways that Ms. Gardner is unhappy with Mr. Bradigan, that she would like for him no longer to be alive. And then they talk about casserole, and then they will move on to other things as far as how to cause his death.
These are difficult to read. This is State's Exhibit Composite 9. These are texts in 2016, and the next slide will be zoomed in a little bit. But here we see Ms. Gardner. This is the first time she brings up the word hitman in her discussions with Ms. Jensen. Can you describe for the court what this conversation centers around and how it develops?
Essentially, Ms. Gardner's upset. She says it's too late to get a hitman. I'm serious. I think Ms. Jensen is trying to kind of talk her down a little bit. And then they move on to basically where they start talking about, does she know anyone that could actually carry out this plan?
And we see that down here in the bottom. You can draw this picture if there's anything you want to circle. That Ms. Jensen says, I know Sue's husband knows people. Ms. Gardner replies, and then replies, I'm not even joking, I want him gone. And the conversation goes on from there. At the time they're having this conversation, and here's a zoomed in version of it. Simultaneous with this conversation, did you also find text messages between Ms. Jensen and the person that they were discussing finding a hitman in the previous slide?
Correct. So while this conversation was going on, Kim Jensen reaches out to the person that they're referring to and asks if she knows anyone that can do magic, i.e. make someone disappear, referring to, do they know anyone?
And I'll one quick second. These text messages between Ms. Jensen and the third party are referenced in both the exhibit we just looked at and text messages that you found later,
That's
correct?
correct.
And in your conversations with Ms. Jensen, she disclosed to you that she reached out to this person because of her conversations with Ms. Gardner.
Correct.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to move into evidence with the marked as State's K as State's Exhibit 10. I'm sorry, as State's J as State's Exhibit 18.
Your Honor, single objection. I don't see anything in here where Ms. Gardner is asking Ms. Jensen to reach out to Sue. I don't know how that can be, what Ms. Jensen did can be used against Ms. Gardner at this point. Again, we're talking about things that are 6 years prior to the killing of Jared Bradigan. I don't believe there's any allegation from the state whatsoever that this led to anything, or that even in the state's theory, to the death of Mr. Bradigan. It's totally irrelevant. It is so stale, and this court should not even consider it for purposes of this bond hearing. It's not relevant.
Your Honor, that
Even
means
as a co-conspirator statement?
Are they saying that the conspiracy went back to 2016? Is that the state's argument?
Ms. Devlin?
Your Honor, the date range encompasses these text messages in the charged indictment. There are further statements leading up to the death of Jared Bradigan between these individuals. They are relevant because they show Ms. Gardner's state of mind, intent, incitement, encouragement as it relates to being a principal in first-degree murder. This is a bond hearing. The rules of evidence are loosened. There's no jury before the court. The court can give whatever weight to these text messages it deems fit based on the argument of Mr. Carodi, but its argument goes to the weight not being Mr. Carodi. They are admissible because they are simultaneous statements to a conversation she's having with Ms. Jensen, to a third party that is then referenced by Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen about what it is they're planning to do or hoping to see done.
As far as the dates, the indictment covers a different time period for the conspiracy. I'm looking at it.
See how fierce she is? See that?
As a count two, the conspiracy covers November 20.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I see it now.
Your Honor, and I would argue then we have a multiple conspiracy problem here. What are they actually charging us as the conspiracy? Because the conspiracy, I think that you have a multiple conspiracy problem.
Maybe for a jury, but why would that apply in a bond hearing?
The judge's argument would be relevant as to purposes of this hearing, which would be, one, because there's only one capital offense on this indictment, the proof evident presumption grade, and the evidence that the state must carry with regard to that is only to the first degree murder charge. So evidence of the conspiracy, I would say, is not relevant. And then the second question would be the state's motion for pretrial detention, which is generally, is she a danger to the community or a flight risk? And I don't see how this evidence would be relevant to that either. And I don't believe there's any connection to this piece of evidence and the killing of Jared Brodigan in February of 2022.
What's the connection?
The connection goes to her intent, incitement, encouragement. Her intent, the crime be committed, which is the first element of the principle.
I love it. She's
the
making-
principle of first degree murder. She wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. She's the one who set the events in motion. The state has to prove that she had the intent specifically that the murder of Jared Brodigan take place. So all of these statements and all of this interaction with her co-conspirators and her attempts to solicit and conspire other individuals that failed up until the point she found the ability to complete the task with Mario Jimenez and Henry Tennant are relevant to her intent.
I guess my question would be, that's why this is admissible. Why would the conspiracy of KJ reaching out to whoever those text messages would be relevant in the connection to Ms. Gardner?
Because she attempted to bring in these individuals into a conspiracy that ultimately resulted in the death of Jared Brodigan and Mario Jimenez Saldana, as the court will hear from Detective John's testimony later in this hearing.
Judge, if the court reads these text messages that are on the screen, Ms. Gardner never asked Ms. Jensen to reach out to sue. This is Ms. Jensen on her own volition. I don't know how that intent can be imputed to Ms. Gardner.
Maybe some of them, these are hard to read.
Yeah, like what were they doing? Like when they made these copies, those are ridiculously like. She's like, I can't even see this. You guys, this is like they just got divorced, or they were going through the divorce in 2015. That's what this is from, 2015 into 2016. What do people say when they're getting divorced? Like, oh my God, I could kill that person. Oh my God. I'm just like, they're trying to say that she's been soliciting for a hitman since then. Who would put that in writing? You know what I mean? Like, I just look at that as venting with friends. I mean, I think that
What timing are those other messages?
all of America would go down for conspiracy here then. That are going through a divorce.
So when she and Ms. Gardner suggesting that she like to get a hitman, she says, I know Sue's husband knows people. She says, I'm not even joking, I want him gone. That's at 1:31 p.m., 7/17/2016. The following slide shows contact between Ms. Jensen and another party on that same date at 4:33 p.m. And then state's exhibit
So 3 hours later, right?
Composite 9 includes text messages on 7/19 and 7/21, in which Ms. Gardner asks Ms. Jensen, do I ask so-and-so about people? Should I ask him today? Referencing the same person that Ms. Jensen and this other third party were discussing.
Tell me the date and time of that.
That one would be July 21st and July 22nd. She asks on July 21st, do I ask X about people? I wait. July 22nd, can I ask M today? Let's see what H says.
Okay, give me a second.
Yes, ma'am. They're also using language in this text that's at issue, code words that they use in other discussions, such as magic, making something secure, etc. This conversation clearly is in context of Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen discussing, asking these people. She just reached out. It doesn't, my contention is she did ask her to reach out. When she says, Sue's husband, I know people, she says, I'm not even joking. I want him gone. That seems like the go-ahead to reach out. I think it's relevant, and the follow-up conversation they have references the conversation Ms. Jensen had with this third party. In the context of following up, let's ask these people. Following up, let's ask these people. Using the code word that she uses with the third party. It gives context to what the defendant and Ms. Jensen are discussing.
You guys see how like she's like reading it, giving like she's not just like, yep, it's in, or no, it's not. Like I love her. I love this judge. Love her. just don't think that these people
Any
can be.
messages you're saying on the same date, just
Yes,
later in
ma'am.
the time?
In these messages between Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen, they're saying things.
No, I'm saying the messages that are in question are on the same date, just later in time. You
Yes,
said
ma'am.
4 o'clock.
They were at 4:30. This conversation continues from 1:27 p.m. through 4:49:56 p.m. when they're discussing these cohorts, Chris Angel, Magician, Disappear. The texts of the third party are in the midst of these texts.
Chris
also
Angel.
discussing
I knew it.
magicians and making people disappear. And then Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen.
Magicians. Are you
following days
fucking
reference these
serious?
individuals that are connected
Let's
to
hit
this
up Chris. You guys know who Chris Angel is? He's from the fucking television show. He'd make himself disappear and shit. He'd make things disappear on TV. No way. Come on, man. Come on. That's like funny.
Is that the one at 17?
Can you hit up Chris Angel for me? Make him
I'm sorry,
disappear.
7:17.
Do you even know who Chris Angel is? You need to look up Chris Angel.
Yes, ma'am. On the third column, the first one, two,
The 4th.
four text messages. And then the first text message in the fourth column, and then the last text message in
2016.
the second column, and the entire first column.
Anything further?
2015.
Sorry, I'll overrule the objection.
Overruled.
Detective Johns,
They're
I
in.
sort of did it for you. I went through these text messages. In these messages, Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen are discussing
Okay, so she overrules, and because the defense objected, she considered it. Now, guess what though? This actually, in my opinion, backfires. Because had this have been objected to and had been granted and sustained, there would have been no more talks about this. Since it was overruled, now Detective Johns he starts talking about things and referencing that he talked to Kim Jensen, okay, and that he's just going to testify to what she told him, and you're allowed to do that if you can meet the hearsay exception rule, which is at a preliminary hearing, something like this. He has so many years, blah blah, because he just meets it. But he says stuff that literally Kim Jensen reaches out to the defense and says, hold on a second. That is not what I ever said ever to this man. And it comes out that this interview with Kim Jensen that he's now going to start referencing never was recorded and never made known to the defense. So the defense is thinking that this all took place because I went back and pulled up some of this discovery. And I'm like, wait a second, but Kim Jensen was interviewed. So why is Jose Baez saying that it's not in the discovery? The second time, she was only interviewed once. The second time, there is no record of any private meeting with Kim Jensen. And they told Kim Jensen that you're a co-conspirator here unless you start talking. Like they do with everybody. But this is where it gets good. So think about this. Think about if the judge would have sustained this, okay, then this would have never happened. So it's just ironic how things always seem to work out. Like, I swear God truly wants to get the truth out, because this rest of this would never happen. The whole stuff with Kim Jensen and these text messages and what Kim Jensen said and blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't be talking about it, but it gets in, and here we go.
giving a hitman, not even joking, and asking Sue's husband is. I'm sorry. And that would be Jay coming in as State's 18.
All right, I'll overrule the defense objection. J will be marked as State's Exhibit 18. All right, I'm sorry. You may proceed.
So Jay's in.
And Detective Johns, we are speaking about older messages, but in your course of your investigation, this type of discussion continued between Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen all the way up to Jared's death.
It does.
And in these messages, they use what you mentioned earlier to be another one of your favorite code words to describe Jared's killing, which would be magic, magician, disappearing act, Chris Angel.
Correct.
So here we are at State's Exhibit now 18. These are text messages between Ms. Jensen and SL. And in these messages, Ms. Jensen is asking her if she knows someone, and she says, Shannon needs a guy. And what direction is this conversation taking?
Basically, Ms. Jensen's reaching out to Ms. Lee and stating, hey, Shannon needs a guy who does permanent disappearing acts. And she says that she needs a magician for stupid, referring to Mr. Rodigan, and asks if she knows anyone who can basically accomplish this.
And then the messages between Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen following that conversation, do they again reference this idea of magic or magician?
Yes, they're initially talking about ways to destroy Mr. Bradigan, in reference to feeding him things that might give him a heart attack. And then Shanna makes the comment that the best time for quote unquote magic is when they're amicable.
And then he or she and Ms. Jensen are discussing the potential individuals they could contact, including someone named Matt.
Yeah, she makes reference to Matt, who she talked to earlier, who was the trainer from the YMCA that she had the alleged affair with.
Okay, we don't need to get into that for purposes of this hearing. They're referring to someone named Nick, and she says between one of those four. So we have several people, Matt, Nick, the individual that she was speaking to Ms. Lee about. And they start referring to them by code names. So M, and then the next slide, which is that there are 2 days of follow-up, July 21st and July 22nd. This is Ms. Gardner in the dark gray, and she is asking Ms. Jensen, do I legit ask Matt about people? Ms. Jensen says to wait. She says nothing, and then the next day, they're again asked, can I ask M today? And to see what H says. Now these text messages, this is not the only contact that Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen are having. They're not just solely communicating by text, are they?
No, they're communicating via phone in other ways as well.
So in some of these text messages, are there points where the conversation ends and a phone call begins?
Correct.
And we're gonna move on to some 2021 text messages in a moment, but I want to talk about how this kind of discussion continues with Ms. Gardner, not just with Ms. Jensen, but with other individuals. So these text messages go up through 2016. I want to discuss some of these individuals who came forward voluntarily to the Jacksonville Beach Police Department with evidence that Ms. Gardner had made similar comments to them. So let's begin. 2017, did a relative of Jared Bradigan seek you out?
Yes, Justin Bradigan, who was Jared's brother, came to the police station. He had stated that he had also left the Church of Latter-day Saints. And when Ms. Gardner found that out, she reached out to him and stated that she wanted to be the cousins together. And so they ended up going over to Mr. Bradigan's home and where they're letting kids play. During that time period, Ms. Gardner made the statement to Justin that she at times was so angry with Jared that she considered hiring a hitman to take him out.
Did he believe her to be joking? Did he say whether she said this in a joking manner?
He indicated that he thought that she was being very serious. However, due to the fact that they were divorced, that was in the past tense context that was something he needed to alert the police, but he didn't believe her to be very serious about it.
And other than M and H and all these other individuals, did anybody come forward to you and say that Ms. Gardner?
Wait a second. Jared's brother went to the police during this time after his brother was, and said, hey, just so you know, Shanna told me back after they had been divorced in 2016 that, hey, I thought about hiring a hitman to kill your brother because he was whatever. And you thought she was being serious and you didn't do anything about that? Like, wait, what? So Shanna Gardner's just running around telling everybody that she's going to hire, or she was planning on it and trying to hire a hitman to kill her husband or future ex-husband. So much so that she tells her brother-in-law this, Justin Bradigan, but he didn't do anything back then with that information. You wouldn't do anything with that information if you thought the person was joking. Okay? If you thought that person was serious, please tell me that you would tell your brother that. You would tell, you'd go to the police. What? Especially if I thought somebody was off their cuckoo rocker, I would do something about it. So I'm just like, whoa, wow. Like these little tidbits that come out in this. Now, again, remember, this is the detective talking. Okay? This is not the person talking about it. It's like, so he's literally saying things that he has either remember, in some capacity that's like, so, and I'm just over here like, wow. Can you imagine that's crazy.
Gardner attempted to solicit them to actually act as a hitman for Jared Bradigan.
Yes, during the time of their divorce, a tattoo shop owner had come forward, by the name of Rapper. He stated that he had spent a lot of time with Ms. Gardner when she was getting her tattoos and some other things. And one night they decided to go out for drinks afterwards. And during that time period, she stated that she needed someone to shut Jared up and asked him if he knew people who shut people up. He indicated that the way that he took that conversation was that she was looking for someone of her then husband.
And I also want to talk about an individual who came forward and provided a sworn statement to investigators regarding conversations she had.
I'll just say this. I have to put this out here that all of these people that came forward now after the fact, they came forward and now saying that like, oh, this is what she meant by it. This is what she meant by it. And none of you people did anything. None of you people went to the authorities all these years that she was doing all of this. But you thought she was serious. You thought she was serious. It's like you're coming, in 2022 when you're being interviewed. Oh yeah, she told me this stuff back then. This is what she said to me. And I took her, she was being serious. but you didn't do anything with that information? No, people that don't do anything with that information, it's because you don't think it's serious. But now you want me to think that you think it's serious. But why didn't you do anything before? I just, again, I have to hear it from these people's mouths because what shitbags, you know? Quite frankly, it's just not believable.
With Ms. Gardner, specifically involving her husband, Mario Fernandez-Aldana.
And I believe the conversation happened in 2017. A friend and coworker of Ms. Gardner's came forward and stated that this was around the time that she was just meeting Mario and they had started dating. And she stated that Shanna told her that Mario had a military background, that he could take some guys, break into Jared's house, and take care of him, and no one would ever know what happened.
Moving on to, now it's going to be State's Exhibit 10. These are text messages between Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen in 2021. And this is a sample, but are there multiple text messages in which Ms. Gardner expresses her discouragement with the child custody battle she's having with Jared Bryan?
Yes, there are lots of examples, both verbally and written, where she is very happy sharing the kids with Mr. Bryan.
And she uses language, not just, I want to use the court system, but I'll never be happy so long as they're involved for a while.
Correct.
And then again, this is a pretty lengthy message to Ms. Jensen from Ms. Gardner. And in this, she expresses that she can't bear the thought of 9 more years of fighting for custody of her children. This is again State's Exhibit 10. So once you got this phone download from Ms. Jensen, before receiving these messages, had you spoken with Ms. Jensen about her knowledge of Shanna Gardner's involvement in the death of Jared Bryan?
Yes, she came to the police station and we did interview her.
Did she mention any of this information when she spoke to the police station?
Not at all.
Did you serve her or assist in serving her with a subpoena to testify in front of the grand jury in February of 2023?
We did.
And did she appear at the grand jury and give testimony?
She did.
When you gave her that subpoena, were you also monitoring Ms. Jensen's poll records and calls?
Yes, we were.
And when she got the subpoena for grand jury, did she contact Ms. Gardner?
She did.
And actually, when she was at the grand jury, was Ms. Gardner calling her?
Yes, she was.
And what has Ms. Jensen told you about her relationship with Ms. Gardner? Are you talking through the murder?
She said that they were very good friends, best friends, and that basically that Ms. Jensen is kind of Shanna's the confidant.
And what did she express about her view of the Jared Bryan versus Shanna Gardner history?
She is Team Shanna, according to her wording. She was not a fan of Jared Bryan, and she has a lot of admiration for Ms. Gardner.
Okay, and she described herself as Team Shanna even after Jared's homicide, even after she was brought into the testimony grand jury and on other occasions involving Ms. Gardner's potential involvement.
That's correct.
Eventually, were you present when Ms. Jensen was interviewed in July into August of 2023?
I was.
And at that point, you had all these text messages that she had not disclosed to you.
That's correct.
And when you spoke to Ms. Jensen, with this evidence available, did Ms. Jensen give further testimony about Shanna Gardner's involvement in the planning and the homicide of Jared Bryan?
She did.
I'm going to go through some of those statements. What did she tell you about?
Boom. This is it right here. Let me back this up. Okay. This is the Kim Jensen, July 2023. This interview was never recorded.
At that point, you had all these text messages that she had not disclosed to you.
That's correct.
And when you spoke to Ms. Jensen, with this evidence available, did Ms. Jensen give further testimony about Shanna Gardner's involvement in the planning and the homicide of Jared Bryan?
She did.
I'm going to go through some of those statements. What did she tell you about her conversation specifically with Mario Fernandez-Aldana about killing Jared Bryan?
She relayed that there were instances where he was so close that you could touch him and Jared didn't know it.
Just to be clear, Ms. Jensen said that Shanna disclosed to her things that Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez spoke about.
Correct.
Did she say that they had several conversations, one conversation?
There were multiple conversations over a multi-year period about Mario killing or finding people who could kill Jared.
Okay. And now we'll get into the specific statements. What did Ms. Jensen say Ms. Gardner disclosed to her about Mario and her plans to kill Jared Bryan?
She made a statement about him, said having people, there were another type of gang that lived behind his house and he could get to kill Jared. That there were times where Mario was so close he could reach out and grab Jared and cause his death. And then just more ways that Mario was capable and the right person to take rid of Jared.
Did she say specifically if there was a certain time or context that Mr. Fernandez-Aldana would offer to do this for Ms. Gardner?
It was typically when she would be either upset with him or when she was upset, more so with something that happened between her and Jared in regards to the children. When she would be upset about some kind of custody issue or some kind of disagreement they would be in, Mario's solution was always to offer to take care of Jared.
And did Kim Jensen tell you what Shanna took take care of, I mean, in quotes, to me?
That would be to kill Jared.
And you mentioned that Ms. Jensen disclosed that Shanna Gardner told her Mario was so close to Jared he could touch him. Did she explain what that meant? Did he actually follow him and was so close he could touch him?
Yes, there were times where he would watch his movements or basically follow him and try to develop patterns of what he did and where he went and what would be the best way to carry out that plan.
Did he call these, did he use any phrasing to describe these moments where he could have done something to Jared Bryan?
Missed opportunities.
Here's some of the statements we talked about. Did Mario also disclosed, or did Ms. Gardner disclose to Ms. Jensen that Mario Fernandez Aldana had followed him in a vehicle on prior occasion?
Yes, that he followed him from the house to back to St. Jessica County.
And what about to the hospital? Okay. Did Ms. Gardner disclose to Ms. Jensen why there was a delay or some kind of reason that this plan wasn't coming to fruition at the time period they're talking about?
There was some
You guys, bond hearings are like little mini trials, little evidentiary hearings. This is as far as when you want to go ahead and try to get, if you want to have bond, and this is what happens. We're going to have this evidentiary little hearing as to why, because obviously Jose Baez and Co are fighting the fact that she should not have no bond. So this is what you get, little mini evidentiary peek, a nice little peek.
There was a discussion between Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen that there was a delay in killing Jared, and that was Mario's excuse was, well, it's during COVID, no one leaves their house during COVID, so therefore I can't get a hold of him, he never leaves his house.
During this meeting with Ms. Jensen, did she advise you about Shannon Gardner's knowledge of Henry Tennant?
She did see that she had met Mr. Tennant, and that she knew that he owned the truck that we had released to the video before.
And to be specific, Ms. Jensen told you that she had conversations with Shannon Gardner about Henry Tennant. Were those conversations before or after Henry Tennant was charged with the murder of Jared Bradigan?
Those were before.
So before Henry Tennant was publicly named as the individual involved in the murder of Jared Bradigan, Shannon Gardner and Kim Jensen had discussions about him.
That's right.
And they had discussions about him owning a truck.
Owning the truck. On surveillance video that we found the night of the homicide, we identified a vehicle of interest that we believe was involved in the homicide, and that was in fact later proved to be the truck that Mr. Tennant owned.
And Ms. Jensen disclosed to you that Shannon Gardner had discussed this vehicle with her prior to Henry Tennant being arrested for murder, or knowledge that that truck belonged to him being public.
Correct.
I want to talk lastly regarding Ms. Jensen's disclosures at this meeting about what she told you about a trip to Hawaii. The Gardner family, can you describe to the court this annual kind of vacation that they were doing to Hawaii?
They have an annual family trip where they all go to Hawaii, and would appear to include all the parents, all the children, and their spouses and grandchildren.
And was there a trip to Hawaii in 2022 prior to the murder of Jared Bradigan?
There was a trip to Hawaii approximately a week before the murder.
And did Shannon Gardner and Mario Fernandez Aldana go on a trip to Hawaii?
They did,
And did they return approximately,
about 4 days before the murder.
so around February 12th, 2022?
Correct.
And did Ms. Jensen describe for you a conversation that Shannon Gardner told her she had with Mario Fernandez Aldana in the week before Jared was killed?
The text messages between the two of them would indicate that their conversation had to do with the fact that Shannon was frustrated with marriage and that she was going to call it off with him, and that they had discussed that and that they were starting plans to do that. However, later she indicated that during that time frame, Mario stated to Shannon that Mario was going to in fact kill Jared, and that if she didn't want it to happen, she needed to speak up and say it now.
Ms. Jensen told you this, and obviously with the testimony of Henry Tennant, that Mario Fernandez came to him the day of the homicide on February 16th, saying he needed to do this now to save his marriage.
Correct.
Ms. Gardner never mentioned any of this information to you when she sat down with you on April 15th, 2022.
No.
Is this information that would have been of interest to you as the investigator into the murder of Jared Bradigan?
Absolutely.
And instead, she actually gave you other theories that could send you down a wild goose chase.
Correct.
Now, I anticipate that when you're cross-examined, or defense makes argument, that there'll be some indication that Ms. Gardner said no or didn't really know Mario was serious about doing this. So I want to talk to you about her actions and some of your investigation into her actions following the death of Jared Bradigan. We'll start with the interviews you did with Mr. Fernandez Aldana and Ms. Gardner in March and April of 2022. Did you also do recorded interviews with Ms. Gardner's children, biological children with Jared Bradigan, who are referred to as LB and AB?
We did not specifically do those interviews. However, the child protection team at the university afforded them.
And I know the court's familiar, but can you explain why it is that you all send children to the child protection team instead of doing interviews yourself?
We generally do not interview anyone under the age of 13. We would send them to a team that includes child psychologists or other trained individuals in a non-threatening, non-traumatic environment to conduct these interviews.
And did AB and LB come to the child protection team and give a recorded forensic interview with the child experts?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall around the date of those interviews?
Would have been a day or two after I had my initial interview with Shannon.
So sometime in early March of 2022.
Correct.
During the interviews with LB and AB, you obviously got an accounting from them of where everyone was in the home that night. Did you note discrepancies between their interviews and what Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez Aldana had told you?
They both, Ms. Carter and Mr. Fernandez stated that he was sleeping due to having a bad headache and taking some medication. Both of the kids indicated that they thought that Mario was in his gaming room, but they later said that they never actually saw him. It was just that his game console was actively playing, so they just assumed that that's where he was at.
And Henry Tennant advised in his sworn statement that Mario Fernandez actually was not at home playing video games or lying on the couch. He was driving the vehicle to the homicide scene to commit his murder.
That's correct.
Okay, so Henry Tennant says that there's no way that he was home because, meaning Mario was home because he was out and about meeting up with me and stuff like that the night of the homicide. And Janet Gardner says that Mario was sleeping and she had her headphones on and cooking dinner. And the children said that they thought that he was playing video games, his console was on or whatever, and that he had a headache, maybe laying down in. So everything that he is relaying here is all hearsay because it's not the person actually speaking for themselves, which is kind of like a preliminary hearing that you can do if you are qualified. But in that last segment there, that Kim Jensen stuff, everything that he is talking about when Stifler, that's the name of this prosecutor, Stifler, come on, how awesome is that? We get to say Stifler, Stifler's mom. Stifler is saying that all came from a July 2023 interview, and that July 2023 interview was not recorded. There's no police report, no nothing. And that's why Jose Baez is hot. And he has every freaking right to be. Wait till you see the lies that Jose Baez catches this man in. Jose Baez he never calls people up and says, hey, I'm actually going to do a press conference on the stairs. Da-da-da. He did a press conference after this to literally make it known what this man did.
So these children are brought to CPT to get this interview. Did Ms. Gardner accompany them?
Yes, you did.
Did Mr. Fernandez Saldana accompany them?
No, in fact, during one of the interviews, one of the children made a utterance that Mario was on his way to Canada with some friends to go camping.
Okay. And did you later get records, financial, call detail records, cell site location data, to figure out if that was true or not?
We did. We got his financial records and we got his cell site data that showed that he essentially was making his way from Jacksonville to Brunswick, North Carolina, to Pennsylvania.
Did he go camping?
He did not camp.
Was based on your investigation, can you describe to the court what the nature of this trip was? Was it pre-planned, vacation, business?
I couldn't tell you what the nature of the trip was, other than the fact that he made surprise visits to some people that he barely knew, and he purchased toiletries on the way. Once he got past North Carolina to Pennsylvania, he was making hotel reservations as he was driving. So it was not a planned trip.
And while he's making this unplanned trip up to Canada, presumably, was he in contact with Ms. Gardner by phone?
Yes, he was.
And at some point, did he cease contact with Ms. Gardner?
He was in contact with her essentially until the CPT interviews were done, and then he essentially turned around and came back home.
Moving to August of 2022. This was a key point in your investigation. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
What happened August 18, 2022?
Mr. Tennant was arrested.
And up until that point, Henry Tennant was not on anyone's radar, so to speak, until probably when?
I would say maybe a few months prior to him being arrested.
And in your investigation, what was the relationship you uncovered of Henry Tennant to Mario Fernandez Saldana and Shannon Gardner?
He lived in one of their rental properties.
And who was the owner or manager of those rental properties?
I'm not sure legally it was Mario Fernandez or their LLC, but one of the two.
And were you able
He
to
knows, he's
identify
lying. He knows what it is.
in murder data?
It's not Shanna
Yes.
Gardner's shit.
Once
It's
you
not
did that,
Shanna Gardner's shit. You
in
fucking
conjunction with
liar.
the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office arrest Henry Tennant on unrelated charges.
I hate liars.
Yes, we essentially formed a plan where we would arrest him once he started driving as a habitual traffic offender, and that plan was executed. He was taken into custody.
I don't think people at large understand. Is this like a common technique that law enforcement does when they're investigating a crime?
Yes, it is.
Does it provide the opportunity to interview somebody who's a potential subject or person of interest?
It does.
Does it present the opportunity to obtain leads and further evidence into that person?
Yes.
So when you arrested Henry Tennant on April 18, 2022, had his name been publicly released anywhere as a person of interest?
Not at all. No.
August 18, 2022. Had you spoken to Mario Fernandez Saldana or to Shannon Gardner about this person, or asked them any questions, or interviewed them about Henry Tennant?
Not at all.
But when Henry Tennant was arrested, was he still living at that home that was run, so to speak, by the First Choice Home Rentals LLC?
Yes, he was.
When he was arrested, what did your investigation uncover about the activity between Mario Fernandez Saldana and Shannon Gardner when their tenant was arrested on a driving charge?
Right after he was arrested, the other gentleman who was living there used an associate's phone as to not be detected to call Mr. Fernandez.
And how do you know that?
He admitted to doing that.
He told you he used someone else's phone to contact Mario Fernandez Saldana to tell him Henry Tennant was arrested.
That's correct.
What did Mario Fernandez Saldana do?
This started a flurry of calls between Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez. And then Ms. Gardner then reached out to her attorney as well as her PR firm.
Okay. And I have here, is this a timeline of relevant calls for purposes of this hearing for that date, August 18, 2022?
That's correct.
NF means Mario Fernandez.
Correct.
Okay. It says here that Ms. Gardner was speaking with someone named Christopher Thomas of the Intrepid Group and someone named Linda Luchetti. Do you know who these individuals are?
I do.
And who are they?
Christopher Thomas is the owner or president of the Intrepid Group, and Linda Luchetti is a media relations consultant that often works with Mr. Thomas.
In the course of your investigation, did you identify these individuals as having been retained by Ms. Gardner during the course of this investigation to sort of help her with her PR?
Yes, that's correct.
And Intrepid Group and Linda Luchetti, are they based out of Salt Lake City, Utah?
That's correct.
And do they have some affiliation with Ms. Gardner's mother's company?
I believe one or both of them had done some work for Stand Up, and they were offering their services pro bono to Ms. Gardner.
What was significant to you about this type of contact on this date?
I mean, the significance to me is your tenant, who you would likely say you had no clue was involved in this, was arrested for, you didn't know what charges at the time, yet you felt the need to alert your attorney and media consultants that your tenant of your rental property was arrested.
For a driving unsuspended license charge?
Correct.
Did you make attempts to speak to Christopher Thomas and Linda Luchetti and other members of the Intrepid PR crisis management firm?
Myself and one of my colleagues flew to Utah and attempted to speak with them, and they avoided us.
Can you be more specific about your attempts and your avoidance?
Okay, the reason this is important, I'm gonna have to slow this down a little bit, is because Henry Tynan was first arrested in August, but it was because he got pulled over for like driving with like it was something to do with like his license or something like that. But it was a ruse. Like they pulled him over for that because they could. And then, but the real reason that it was is they were already looking into him because of this case. And so my understanding is he's saying that Shanna Gardner, the day or day after he was arrested in August, which had nothing to do with the homicide, that Shanna Gardner is making phone calls to the Salt Lake City PR people, notifying them about this man's arrest with his vehicle issues, and that how does she even know anything about this if you don't even know him, type of thing like that.
Well, Ms. Luchetti was running frantically around the front of her house as to hide from me so that I could see that she was in her house. Mr. Thomas was not at his office, went to his residence, and he had his wife answer the door a couple times to avoid speaking to me.
Were you eventually able to receive evidence and statements from Chris Thomas with Intrepid Group after he retained a criminal defense attorney?
Yes, I just said he stated he hired an attorney and contacted the state attorney's office directly.
Okay. And we'll get to the information they gave you in a moment. Moving on to states. What's been entered into Evidence 6, Exhibit 12. This is a text message between Ms. Jensen and Shanna Gardner on that date, August 18, 2022.
Hold on one second.
And reached out to her attorney as well as her PR firm.
Okay. And I have here, is this a timeline of relevant calls for purposes of this hearing for that date, August 18, 2022?
That's correct.
NF means Mario Fernandez.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so 2:16, Gardner receives a phone call from Christopher Thomas. So she received the phone call. I knew it. Fucking liars, man. Okay, she receives the phone call. She didn't call him. Then Gardner receives a phone call from Linda, media relations specialist in Utah. So they're calling her. Where does it say that she called them? Gardner called MF, Mario Fernandez, at 14. It's like 2. Gardner calls Home Depot, Jacksonville Beach. Okay, she calls Home Depot. Gardner calls Mario Fernandez, something about that. Exchange of messages. MF calls Gardner duration. Gardner receives a call from Christopher Thomas of Intrepid Group. Okay, PR crisis management firm. But again, they were calling her. This is on August 18th. So where is it saying that she called them?
It says here that Ms. Gardner was speaking with someone named Christopher Thomas of the Intrepid Group and someone named Linda Lucetti. Do you know who these individuals are,
I do.
and who are they?
Christopher Thomas is the owner or president of the Intrepid Group, and Linda Lucetti is a media relations consultant that often works with Mr. Thomas.
In the course of your investigation, did you identify these individuals as having been retained by Ms. Gardner during the course of this investigation to sort of help her with her PR?
Yes, that's correct.
And Intrepid Group and Linda Lucetti, are they based out of Salt Lake City, Utah?
That's correct.
And do they have some affiliation with Ms. Gardner's mother's company?
I believe one or both of them had done some work for Stand It Up, and they were offering their services pro bono to Ms. Gardner.
What was significant to you about this type of contact on this date?
I mean, the significance to me is your tenant who would likely say that you have no clue who was involved in this was arrested for, you didn't know what charges at the time, yet you felt the need to alert your attorney and media consultants that your tenant.
Wait, did you just see how he just testified? You felt the need to alert them? What are you talking about, bro? They called her. They called her. You guys just saw they called her. They called Shanna Gardner. Shanna Gardner didn't call them. She received the phone calls. She wasn't calling them. Do you guys just see what he's lying to here? I mean, I will double check one more time on this, what this looks like. Gardner receives a phone call from. Gardner receives a call from Christopher. Gardner receives. Where is Gardner? Gardner, the only person she's calling is Mario Fernandez. Gardner calls MF. And it's not like she calls him right now. Like, look at 2:16, 2:47, look at 4 minutes and 25 seconds, 10 minutes and 21 seconds. She doesn't get off the phone and like call Mario. Okay. So he literally on the stand right here is lying about Miss Gardner making these phone calls. She received, how could she be, they called her. So unless you're saying that there was text messages, hey, call me when you can. That's not what he testified to.
That Ms. Gardner was speaking with someone named Christopher Thomas of the Intrepid Group and someone named Linda Lucetti. Do you know who these individuals are,
I do.
and who are they?
Christopher Thomas is the owner or president of the Intrepid Group, and Linda Lucetti is a media relations consultant that often works with Mr. Thomas.
In the course of your investigation, did you identify these individuals as having been retained by Ms. Gardner during the course of this investigation to sort of help her with her PR?
Yes, that's correct.
And Intrepid Group and Linda Lucetti, are they based out of Salt Lake City, Utah?
That's correct.
And do they have some affiliation with Ms. Gardner's mother's company?
I believe one or both of them had done some work for Stand It Up, and they were offering their services pro bono to Ms. Gardner.
What was significant to you about this type of contact?
Here it comes. Here comes a lie.
I mean, the significance to me is your tenant who would likely say that you had no clue who was involved in this was arrested for, you didn't know what charges at the time, yet you felt the need to alert your attorney and media consultants that your tenant of your rental property was arrested.
For driving under suspended license charge?
Right.
Did you make attempts to
Wait, where does that say that though? Wait, you're gotta be kidding me right now. Where do those messages say that? They're text messages? How do you know what they talked about? You don't know what they talked about. But more importantly, she didn't call them. They called her. He's just, you see this, this is his narrative. But that's not what that shows.
speak to Christopher Thomas and Linda Lucetti and other members of the Intrepid PR crisis management firm?
Myself and one of my colleagues flew to Utah in an attempt to speak with them, and
Why didn't you just call them? You flew to Utah?
they avoided us.
Can you be more specific about your attempts and their avoidance?
Again, guys, this is his narration. Now he flew to Utah, okay, and that they just avoided us. And why I'm questioning everything that he's saying is because of the lie that he told about Kim Jensen. So now listen to all of this.
Avoidance.
Well, Ms. Lucetti was running frantically around in front of her house as to
Miss Lucetti was running around frantically in the front of her house.
hide from me so that I could see that she was in her house. Mr. Thomas was not at his office, went to his residence, and he had his wife answer the door a couple times to avoid speaking to her.
Were you eventually able to receive evidence and statements from Chris Thomas with Intrepid Group after he retained a criminal defense attorney?
Yes, I just said he stated he hired an attorney and contacted the state attorney's office directly.
Okay. And we'll get to the information they gave you in a moment. Moving on to states. What's been entered into evidence states exhibit 12. This is a text message between Ms. Jensen and Shanna Gardner on that date, August 18, 2022. It says, I don't want anyone to know, and Ms. Jensen says, I'm not. Can you describe for the court the context of these text messages?
I believe this was like a lunch date that was coming up, and they did not want anyone to know that their tenant had been arrested at that time.
And this text is from the date that Henry was arrested.
That's correct.
States exhibit, composite exhibit 11, are these the text messages that were turned over by Intrepid PR Group?
Yes.
Okay, and this highlighted number, does that phone number belong to the associate of the Intrepid PR Group?
Yes.
And these texts are dated August 18th and August 22nd, 2022. Was there one person who was willing to speak to you when you went to Utah?
There was.
And without using her name, can you describe who she is?
She was a junior level social media manager at the PR firm.
And she no longer worked for them when you made your trip to Utah?
That's correct.
What did she tell you about the contact between Intrepid Group and their other PR associates at the time and Ms. Gardner on this date?
As soon as Ms. Gardner found out that their tenant had been arrested, she, her words, frantically was trying to reach someone with Intrepid. She couldn't get hold of anyone else just due to the time difference was very early in the morning. However, this social media person answered her phone and started taking down notes to give to Chris Thomas later on.
What did she say Ms. Gardner relayed to her?
That their tenant had been arrested and that tenant owned the truck that the police were looking for.
Moving further in the state's composite exhibit 11, these are text messages with the Intrepid PR Group. These individuals are employees of that group, correct?
That's correct.
And this is dated August 18, 2022, the date of Henry Tennant's arrest on driving on suspended license, habitual charges. We see here, is this green? That is Mr. Thomas, who is the lead on our case.
Correct.
Okay. He said he spoke with Shanna and there were interesting developments in her case. And then moving on, ignore the language, but the last text message is August 24, 2022. Can you describe for the court what your investigation uncovered as to Mr. Thomas's knowledge regarding the charges?
Just that they weren't sure what the charges were, but it seemed to be unrelated to the truck. Or anything to do with Jared.
And again, at the time these messages are being sent, nobody other than the people who hired Henry Tennant would know of his existence as a link to the murder of Jared Brighton,
Correct.
other than Justin. In the court's binder of exhibits, State's Exhibit 13 is a business record showing the authenticity of Apple records received. Did you receive evidence related to an iCloud belonging to Shanna Gardner?
Yes.
And in particular, were you looking for evidence in that cloud relevant to a Ring camera that Ms. Gardner and Mr. Fernandez Saldana had on the front of their house?
Yes, the Ring camera was located outside the front door. The day after detectives went and notified them of Mr. Brighton's death, they asked to see or if the Ring camera had picked up anyone who might have passed by their residence. Ms. Gardner showed the ring to the detective, and there were no recordings past the 16th.
When you received the iCloud return of Ring footage, was there anything significant to you about what was or was not there?
On the iCloud were recordings from the Ring camera that we could also tell basically that the camera's settings were to constantly record. There were videos on the iCloud that showed both vehicles passing by their residence as well as customers coming to pick up orders or Mr. Fernandez putting an order outside their door. These were all things that would have been, it appeared would have always been picked up by the Ring camera. However, on the night of the homicide, there was no activity on the Ring camera, at least in the app, indicating that it was likely that the information was either deleted or the camera was set to not record.
And you know that because what did AB and LB told you, or what did they tell you about how they entered the house that night, the night of homicide?
They indicated that they would typically go through the garage. However, the garage door was closed, so they used the keypad on the front door, which would have been captured on the ring camera.
So based on what they told you, did you expect to see at least, at minimum, a ring footage video of AB and LB entering the home minutes before Jared Briding was killed on the night of homicide?
Based upon the past history that was located on the iCloud, we expected to find them entering the residence as well as Jared's vehicle passing by camera.
And there was no footage of those events.
That's correct.
And in fact, on this text message on August 22nd, 2022, which is around the same time period, Ms. Gardner was speaking to her PR firm about potential charges against Henry Tennant. Do she and Kim Jensen have a discussion about ring footage?
Yes, I sent a subpoena to Ring, which they were nice enough to forward to Mr. Fernandez and Gardner.
Okay, so Ring was not supposed to do that, I'm presuming.
No.
And so she is discussing, in this particular time in the investigation, which is significant to you, she and Ms. Jensen are discussing that Ring subpoena, and if they have it, they've given the video.
Correct. In fact, it was actually a search warrant. It wasn't a subpoena. They referred to it as a subpoena.
And then State's Exhibit 14, this is a text with Ms. Jensen also regarding the cloud. And can you describe to the court what the significance of these texts are? This is September 2022.
This is Ms. Jensen basically asking Shannon or talking to Shannon about whether or not she still has her old additional cell phone. And then they were basically stating that without her creating an
State's Exhibit 14,
Want to go with these? Okay, unknown why. Kim, I was thinking about it, and it seems to me that with the same number, everything from both lines will be synced to the cloud, and this is all irrelevant without a new ID.
this is a text with Ms. Jensen also regarding the cloud. And can you describe to the court what the significance of these texts are? This is September 2022.
This is Ms. Jensen basically asking Shannon or talking to Shannon about whether or not she still has her old additional cell phone. And then they were basically stating that without her creating a new cloud ID, all of her data would just essentially be backed up to the secondary cell phone, which would defeat the purpose of having a second phone.
And Ms. Jensen makes a comment, I was thinking about that damn cloud.
Correct.
When you received, most of the evidence that we discussed in this hearing came from the cell phone of Kim Jensen.
That's correct.
Did you do examinations of cell phones, devices, clouds, returns for Shannon Gardner?
Yes, we did. We did cell phone downloads as well as Google and iCloud search warrants.
In the returns of those items, devices, and returns, did you find the same conversations that you had found on Ms. Jensen's phone?
Some of the conversations were there, but a lot of the conversations were not.
So like the ring cloud, I'm sorry, the cloud of the ring footage, you were expecting to see evidence that was not present on Ms. Gardner's devices.
That's correct.
Henry Tennant was eventually arrested and charged with murder of Jared Briding.
That's correct.
And you recall the date on which that occurred, or the time period in which that occurred.
Early January 2023.
Leading up to the arrest of Henry Tennant, were there investigative techniques being pursued by the Jacksonville Beach Police Department?
Yes, during the time that we knew we were going to announce the charges against Tennant, we had also received a court order for a wire intercept.
And a wire intercept to intercept phone, text, and audio communications between Ms. Gardner, Mr. Fernandez Saldana, and other individuals of interest.
That's correct.
And that court order was, you did an application and a judge granted that.
That's correct.
In order to get chatter generated, what did you all decide to do to what the phrase being trigger communications?
We decided to go ahead and have a wire in place before the charges were announced against Mr. Tennant. We did that, and then we made the announcement about the arrest or the additional charges that have been added.
And before you made the announcement,
Okay, so they went ahead and they put a wiretap trace that, just so you guys know, that's what they're talking about here. So Henry was arrested August of 2022 for the auto stuff. Then, so they wait, so August, so September, so they're monitoring all this stuff. September, October, November, December. Okay, then they said, okay, January 2023, we're going to go ahead and break the news because we're going to go ahead and arrest Henry Tennant for the murder of Jared, okay? Before they do that, though, they put in, with the court order, the chatter, and then it's the wire, they put it in place, and they do that before they announce the arrest. So,
announced about Henry Tennant's arrest.
because now they want to see how and what Shanna Gardner, Mario, and whoever else what they're going to go ahead and do.
You purposely leaked information to the media that a break or an arrest was imminent.
Yes,
And did the media run with that information?
yes.
Okay. Did you say who was going to?
Did you guys just hear that? Okay, listen. They purposely leaked information to the media. Okay, so listen to what they can do. Listen to what police do. They leaked information to the media purposely that an arrest was coming. For what reasons? Because we got this wiretap trace in place. Let's go. Let's pop him. Look at how giddy he is. Okay. But yet you're only showing half of these text messages, and then just telling us what they mean.
Going to be arrested?
No,
So the information was just that an arrest or big break was coming.
that's correct.
And Your Honor, the state has moved into evidence 15, 16, and 17, which are wired recording calls of Ms. Gardner from the wiretap. For time's sake, I'm not going to play the entire calls until the detective testifies to the relevant portions. Beginning with call 170, which is state's exhibit 15, what was one of the first calls that Shanna Gardner made after this leak was out and being publicized?
She was speaking with Ms. Jensen, wondering if she should give Mario a heads up about the information she received.
And you remember specifically in greater detail kind of how it was that she learned of the leak and what her reaction was?
I actually don't remember how she learned the leak.
Did she describe to Ms. Jensen how she was going to give Mario a heads up or a warning that a big break was coming?
She talked about actually using her neighbor's phone in order to call Mario to give him information about it.
And that neighbor would be Marla Rogers.
That's correct.
During the entirety of the wiretap, was this a common theme that Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen discussed that their phones might be monitored?
Yes, that's correct. She made statements about the fact that she was warned that her phone was likely tapped.
And that was January 23rd, 2023. We're going to move on to a few days later when the arrest of Henry Tennant as the person responsible for the death of Jared Brightigan, at least responsible for the actual pulling of the trigger, is released. I want to discuss a phone call that Ms. Gardner made to her public relations firm on 1/25/2023. And I've included a portion of the transcript that the monitor used here. Can you describe for the court what was significant to you about this conversation?
She said that she admitted to knowing Henry, that she had met him approximately 5 years ago, but there should be no paperwork tying him to the rental property.
At the time that she made this call, the media did a good job. They covered this fairly quickly. But at the time she made this call, had the media yet reported that Henry Tennant was linked to Mario Fernandez Saldana?
No,
At the time she made this call, had the media reported that Henry Tennant was a tenant to Mario Fernandez Saldana and Shanna Gardner's LLC?
no.
So in this call, she's telling them that Henry Tennant, the person under arrest, is in fact a tenant, but there's no paperwork or payments attaching him.
Correct.
What was the reaction of the individuals with Intrepid PR Group?
Their initial reaction was, well, that must have been a long time ago, right? Like you didn't, this was not a recent payment or anything like that. However, Ms. Gardner went on to tell them, in fact, that they had given him money earlier in the year. At that point, they basically told her that they should probably stop communicating about this.
So she advised the public relations firm that she and Mario Fernandez Saldana had paid Henry Tennant money for a pallet business within the past year.
Correct.
We discussed a call also made that day. I have the time notated wrong in here. It was at 17:27 on 1/25/23 between Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen. And was there another call in which she discussed Henry Tennant and monetary payment she made with Ms. Jensen?
Yeah, was essentially about whether they were was Tennant going to use the information against them to garner a better deal or throw them under the bus or twist them to be involved in this.
Throughout the course of the wiretap, Ms. Gardner, and here again, they're referencing that she might reactivate her other one. Were there discussion amongst them
Wait a second. So are those just his notes for each of the calls?
about using other devices, platforms, phones, etc., to contact each other?
Ms. Gardner and Ms. Jensen will frequently talk about whether they could use FaceTime or other applications that were encrypted to communicate so that they cannot be intercepted by law enforcement.
Not to give away state secrets, but can you evade a law enforcement interception by using other platforms and devices?
Yes, you can.
The last thing I want to talk about is some of Ms. Gardner's activities following the arrest of Mario Fernandez Saldana, which came in March of 2023 after Henry Tennant gave testimony against him. Was Ms. Gardner living in Florida during the wiretap?
Yes, or no, excuse me, she was in Washington State.
And how did you find out that Ms. Gardner had moved from Jacksonville, Florida to Washington State?
U.S. Postal Inspector.
After Mario
Wait a second. So she was in Washington?
Fernandez Saldana
I knew that she was, but interesting. What are the wiretapping laws in Washington?
was arrested for the murder of Jared Bardigan, conspiracy and solicitation and child abuse, did Ms. Gardner remain in Washington State?
No, there was a 5-month period where she was not with her children and she was moving around,
And how did you determine that?
mostly through cell site records.
Where did you determine that she was living?
Period. She rented an Airbnb in Tallahassee for a while, and at some point had moved on to Savannah.
And during this time, she was using a secondary phone or a different phone number than the one you had associated to her.
That's correct. She had activated the day that she flew from Washington to Tallahassee. She had reactivated her little burner phone.
And you say quote unquote burner phone. Where did that quote come from?
When officers went to Washington to serve a search warrant, one of her children asked if we were looking for mommy's burner phone.
Detective Johns, obviously Ms. Gardner did have several phones and phone numbers during the time period of investigation prior to her arrest. And your team effectuated arrest on her in August of 2023 in West Richland, Washington.
That's correct.
Why did you all make the decision to effectuate an arrest on her rather than allowing her to turn herself in?
We wanted to make sure that she did not attempt to flee. Her parents had considerable assets, and it would be very easy, given her geographic position, to get on a private jet and fly there.
When you did research into the financials of her home in West Richland, Washington, who bought that home and who paid for it?
It was purchased by an LLC that is owned by her parents.
Detective Johns, I have one on here.
Yes.
Detective Johns, I'm winding down. I just want to summarize the main points of your testimony that I think are important for the court to consider. One being, where did the money that was paid to Henry Tennant to kill Jared Bardigan come from?
The money came from the trust that was established by Mr. and Mrs. Gardner.
And was that trust held in the name of Shanna Gardner?
Well, it was, the trust itself was named the Shanna Gardner Revocable Trust, yes.
And the funds from the Shanna Gardner Revocable Trust that paid Henry Tennant were moved from the trust into First Choice Home Rentals LLC.
That's correct.
And the owners of the LLC are who?
The owners of the LLC are Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez.
And Detective Johns, of your entire investigation, was there anybody else that you uncovered with a motive of such depth and breadth as that of Ms. Gardner to have Jared Bardigan killed?
No.
And in your investigation, you obviously uncovered all these trail of individuals and text messages in which Ms. Gardner incited, encouraged, solicited, and asked other individuals to help find someone who appears someone to do this task.
Yes.
And Ms. Gardner, again, never mentioned any of this information to you when you interviewed her as a witness looking for helpful information in this case.
That's correct. You never mentioned anything.
And she never came forward, even over time, as all of these other events unfolded, including Mario's Fernandez Saldana's unexplained trip up north, the arrest of Henry Tennant, her move to Washington, or her moves to Tallahassee, Savannah.
Correct.
And at this time, I have no further questions.
All right, we're going to take a 15-minute recess.
All right, so Jose is about to do this cross. And okay. Jose Baez back in the courtroom.
With some of the
All right, so again, the whole purpose of this is to make sure that Shanna Gardner does not get bail. Okay, that's why he was talking there at the end about that she could be a flight risk. Her parents have money; they can just put her on a plane or travel, whatever. Blah blah blah.
Sir, Detective Johns, I have the benefit of knowing what you were going to say, so I'm going to bounce around. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, first, let me start with some of the introductory stuff. At the time of this case, at the time of the murder, you had only been a police officer for 3.5 years.
Correct.
So You went to the police academy,
Correct.
and then I guess you did field training?
Correct.
How long did you do field training?
So 16 weeks.
16 weeks. Okay, so for about half the year, you were basically training, correct?
Correct.
How long were you on patrol?
So I previously worked for the police department for 10 months. I left for a few years, came back. I've been in patrol for 3 of those years. And I also served as a crime scene technician at part of that time as well.
Okay, so on this go round, how long were you on patrol?
About 3 years.
Okay, so you were a relatively new detective when this case came?
Yes, sir.
Came to? Okay, was this your first homicide investigation?
It was. As not as a crime scene technician, but as a detective, yes.
Okay, so.
First
would a
homicide.
case be your first, right? Quite a lot of attention.
Yes.
Okay, and a lot of attention comes with some pressure, right?
Yes.
Pressure to do the job right.
Sorry, Mr. Baez.
Pressure to do the job right.
Of course.
And of course, that's what you want to do, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so, sir, I want to kind of go back and let's start with your testimony about the divorce between Jared Brightingham and Shannon Gardner.
Sure.
Now, you know, of course, when you testified that it was a acrimonious divorce, correct?
Correct.
And that a majority of the issues that they had between the two of them were child custody issues, correct?
That's correct.
As part of your job and part of the investigation, it would have been for you to not just take people's words for it, but to actually check the docket of the cases that were involved between Jared Brightingham and Shannon Gardner, correct?
I would say that's true, but in this case, that's language coming directly from the defendant.
Okay. But of course, you would verify that, right?
In this case, I didn't feel that I needed to verify words that I'm using that she stated. But yes, they were verified.
Okay. And who verified them? You?
I did not know.
Okay. But as this being your case, of course, the information came to you.
Yes.
And you relied on your testimony based on all the information that you gathered, correct?
Correct.
Some of which you did, some of which you did not do, correct?
That's fair, yes.
Okay, so, sir, are you aware of the fact that a majority of the issues, well, if not all the issues, revolved around money and not child custody, as you testified?
I have not read all of the arguments or motions that were filed in their case. I'm solely going off of what I learned during interviews.
So, tell me if you take issue with what I'm about to tell you. You're aware that Shanna filed for divorce in February of 2015, correct?
Correct, yes.
And in fact, it was resolved on July of 15 that same year, correct?
That's correct.
So it's quite a quickie divorce, when you say?
I'm not sure. I don't
You never
have a lot of experience in how long divorce proceedings typically take.
You've never had the pleasure of being divorced?
I didn't say that. I said I'm not a family law person. I don't know how long it takes.
Okay, but you would agree, you wouldn't characterize 5 months as a long drawn out divorce.
It would appear. I would assume it's fairly typical.
And as included in that agreement was, of course, the parenting agreement, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
As well as custody, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, and the first issue that occurred was in January of 16, when Shanna Gardner asked for child support against Jared Brightingham, correct?
Okay. Take your word for it.
Okay, well, you're also aware that Jared Brightingham moved to Utah in November of 2015, correct?
That's correct.
And he got a job over there, correct?
That is correct.
And it's when he was working and away from the child, let me clarify that. Shanna Gardner stayed in Jacksonville with the children, correct?
She did, yes.
Okay, and Jared goes away to Utah, he gets a job there, and then she files asking for child support, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And are you aware that he objected to paying child support and then moved back to Florida so he didn't have to pay child support?
Yes, sir. In fact, Ms. Gardner made a statement during an interview with her that she was calling his bluff to see if he would pay the child support or come back.
Okay, and then ultimately on September of 2017, the court ordered him to pay $1,000 a month child support, correct?
Okay.
Okay. Now, subsequent to that, in January of 18, Jared filed against Shanna a petition on an issue dealing with the fact that he was paying more for health insurance for the children, correct?
Okay.
And at that point, sir, he was granted relief and his child support was reduced $65 a month. Were you aware of that?
No, it was not.
Okay. Now, subsequent to that, on February of 19, Jared filed for a modification of child support, claiming that Ms. Gardner had rental property income, so therefore she's making more money, he should pay less. Are you aware of that?
No, it was not.
Okay. So you're not aware that he's 2 weeks later subsequently dismissed it upon finding out that there were no rental properties?
The only thing I know of their proceedings, or as far as other than the dockets, are what was told to me, mostly by Mrs. Gardner.
Okay, but my question is are you aware of that?
That it was dismissed?
Yes.
No.
Then, are you aware that in April of 2019, Jared Bright again objected to having the children in, I guess, a discovery school that was right behind Ms. Gardner's house?
Yes, sir. I am aware of that.
Okay. And this is a private school, right?
That's correct.
And the person paying for this private school is Shannon Gardner, correct?
I believe it's coming from the trust.
Well, ultimately, she's paying for it, right?
I mean, ultimately, Mark Fernandez was paying for it.
Let me rephrase that, Mr. Bright again.
Did you just hear him say that?
That's correct.
All right. So,
Mario
Now,
Fernandez is paying for that.
and are you aware that that was ultimately resolved in August of 2019, where after having the child support reduced to $65 a month, Shannon Gardner waived Jared Brightingham from having to pay any child support in exchange for them to just stay at that school?
Yes, I am aware of that.
Okay. And then the last dispute was in June of 2021 over the fact that there was an oxygen machine for one of the children that was in Mr. Brightingham's home, correct? You're aware of the issue with the oxygen machine?
There was an issue between where one of them had an oxygen machine. They did not want to let the other one use it. So then the other one went and bought a better oxygen machine. And then there was some dispute over if that could be used by both parties.
Okay. Now,
I don't know anything more than that though.
okay, so let me ask you this. Are you aware that the dispute was because Jared Brightingham did not want Ms. Gardner to have access to the oxygen machine while they went on vacation with the children?
I don't know the details of everything to do with the oxygen machine.
You don't know that part, correct?
It was my understanding that it's something to do with the fact that Mr. Brightingham wanted to use an oxygen machine that had been purchased by Mrs. Gardner. She said no. He purchased as it was explained to me, a better oxygen machine that then Ms. Gardner wanted to use because it was a better machine. But Mr. Brightingham did not want her to use it because she already had one of her own, and but that is the extent of what I know about the oxygen machine.
But you were aware that Ms. Gardner helped pay for that oxygen machine that was kept at Mr.
I don't know the details of the payment of it.
So when you verified and checked the docket sheet of the court, did you see the court order that required Jared Brightingham to pay Ms. Shannon Gardner $571 so that he could have sole possession of the oxygen machine and not have to lend it to Ms. Gardner?
No.
Okay. So none of these issues have to do with, let me ask you this. You're aware that there are no further litigation going on in this divorce other than what we just covered, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So, and it's fair to say that out of all of these things, none have to do with sharing custody with these children between Shannon Gardner and Jared Brightingham.
Correct. None of the things you mentioned have to do with custody.
And none of the things in the court docket say so either, correct?
I've not reviewed the court document.
Okay, but as a team of law enforcement detectives, you guys did that, correct?
That was done correct.
Now, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, Ms. Stifler will.
I'm sure.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you testified about this rental property that Mr. Tennant lived in, correct?
That's correct.
And I circled or I quoted you when you said their rental property, correct?
Correct.
And when you say their, you're talking about Shannon Gardner and Mario Fernandez, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you're aware that Mario Fernandez owned that property before ever marrying Shannon Gardner?
Yes. That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So that would make it his property, correct?
I don't know the terms of their marriage or what they decided to move into the LLC that they created to manage their rental property.
Well, you would agree, sir, that if you own something before you get married, that is not marital property, correct?
I'm not a law expert in family law.
All right. Now, before we get to Mr. Tennant, I want to talk about some of these text messages. You're aware that these text messages are, a majority of the text messages, and all of the text messages having to do with a hitman, are way back in 2015 and 16, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, all of the witnesses who told you about these alleged statements made by Ms. Gardner were referring back to 2015 up to 17, correct?
That's correct.
So fair to say too, that was when the tension between Ms. Gardner and Mr. Brightingham were at its peak, correct?
I can't speak to her state of mind.
But based on what you saw from the text messages, from the investigation, from all the people you talked to, it was pretty bad early on, right?
I would assume that would be true, but I would also argue that there are sprinkles of comments made throughout the entire time period that would indicate that she had issue with sharing custody with Mr. Brightigan, or that there were things that she would be frustrated over.
Okay, I like your word, sprinkles, so I'm gonna use that, okay? So sprinkles are, of course, her frustrations between the drop-off schedules, different minor mundane things like that, correct? Things that they were,
It was typically custody issues,
well,
dropping the kids off,
more like
changing dates that they would have the visitation, where they were going to go to school, what date, who would drop them off, who would pick them up, vacations, things like that, which I would consider custody issues.
okay, so would you mind if I correct you and say what we're talking about are more visitation issues than custody issues, right?
That's fair.
Okay, so now you would agree that as a detective, you come across all kinds of people, right?
Yes.
People who are highly educated, right?
Yes.
People who aren't as much educated as well, correct?
That's true.
People from different hoods, right?
Yes.
People with different upbringing, correct? How much exposure have you had to folks from the Mormon faith?
How much exposure have you had
I went to high school with some people who were Mormon,
in the Mormon?
but I am not an expert in their culture.
Okay, so the extent of your exposure to that culture is that you went to high school with a couple of Mormons.
Correct.
Okay. Now, also some people, you mentioned that Shannon Gardner and KJ were very close, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, they talked about everything, right?
Correct.
And a lot of joking going on between the two of them, from what you can see.
Yes.
Okay, and it's also fair to say that they spoke about killing quite loosely and jokingly, correct?
Only when it came to Jared Brightigan.
Okay.
I'll watch this impeachment. Only about
That'll be
Jared.
defense 6, right?
Only about Jared.
Objection to the-
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
Let's see.
objection. All right, that'll be defense 6. What is it?
Series of text messages.
Okay.
Okay, I'm showing you defendant 6, Detective Johns. May I have principal witness?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's go over these, since you said they talked about killing only during Jared. This is a text message from KJ saying, sure do love all the hours I spent on the phone just to find out, well, excuse me, that's the message of the body. Just to find out one of the children's meds are now $300 a month, and that brand of nose spray isn't covered at all. Hashtag, I might kill people today. You see that, sir?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Then you see another text message, record 603, where it says,
I may kill
so
people
help me if I
today.
get there at 8 on Monday and I get turned away, or it doesn't happen, or I have to wait longer than an hour, I might kill someone. See that?
Yes, sir. I did.
Not talking about Jared Brightigan, right?
I don't know that.
Okay. You don't know, what about the one ahead of it, having to deal with the meds? Are they talking about Jared Brightigan?
I don't know. I don't know who she's referring to.
She's talking about meds, correct?
She's frustrated over medication, it would appear.
Costing so much, right?
Correct.
Okay, we'll go to the third one. No worries, I'm trying not to kill the little shit. Do you believe, based on looking at the body of these text messages, that they were talking about Jared Brightigan?
I'm gonna.
She might have called him that.
Well, you know that she called him stupid, right?
Yes.
You know they both called
Do you
him
see how? Do you
correct?
see how
Correct.
argument?
Okay, so that's how they refer to him. And you also know the context of these messages had to
Do you see what is being showed here right now? This is what you call biased right here. Jose Baez is asking you questions. You know damn well Shanna Gardner is not talking about, like, yeah, no, she's not talking about him. Yeah, I don't know. Like, he's going to get destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. Lead. This is like Payne basically being on the stand right now. Lead detective in this case, first homicide ever. And this man just isn't just answering the questions. I'm doing my job. Okay. You asked me a question, I'm going to answer it. Listen to this man answer Jose Baez's questions.
Had to do with the child, correct?
That's correct.
Now, nobody killed the little shit, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so in addition to that, the next text message says, I need a break from my kids, like I'm ready to kill them. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's not dealing with Jared Brightigan, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's quite loosely spoken, correct?
Correct.
Now, everything, I guess it's fair to say, from numerous witnesses, many people told you that Shanna Gardner was an incredibly dedicated mother and loved her children, correct?
Yes.
And that her children meant the world to her.
Yes.
Right? Now let's go to the next page. I'm out of data and still no internet, TV, and Wi-Fi. I'm downloading at reverse turtle speed. I'm assuming it's the kids and how school ready they look today. Call me after work. I need to get you film for Amy's video. If I can see you today in person, I can FT you, FaceTime you, and have Brad film that. We didn't go to the video, we didn't do the video on the phone. We used a real camera. So I have to figure out the splicing. I'm on hold with T-Mobile trying to get my data back from the hurricane. This is crazy. Comcast is saying they hope I have service tomorrow. I'll have killed someone by then. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to kill somebody by then.
And then the next message says, could kill Enterprise. They are 30 minutes late.
Enterprise.
I call, she's like, all right, someone is on their way. Freaking kidding me? You see that?
Yes.
Jared didn't work for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, did he?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And this obviously has nothing to do with Jared Brightigan, correct?
Correct.
So I would agree, it might be unusual to use that word often, but they in fact did use those words often, correct?
Yes, I think she did use it in her hyperbole at times.
And that's a lot of how Shanna Gardner speaks from the messages you reviewed, correct?
I did not review every single message she ever wrote. However, I would argue that the frequency in which she spoke about Jared was much different than the one-off messages that you've indicated here.
Prefacing your testimony with you haven't reviewed all the messages, correct?
Not in her entire phone, just during the time period.
Now, a lot of the other hyperbole she would use is talking about killing herself, correct?
I don't know. I didn't see any
You
messages.
never saw any messages about her killing herself.
No, I did not.
Okay, and you know that these two women, in fact, I noticed in some of the state's exhibits, when they talk about killing Jared, much of it is with an LOL followed or some other face emoji. You saw those, correct?
There are a lot of those, yes.
In fact, they like to rip Jared,
Absolutely.
okay? And there's also comments about, there was that section with the alleged co-conspirator, KJ, and then her communicating with Sue. Excuse me. Another woman by the name of Susan Lee, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you never spoke to Susan Lee, did you?
I believe one of my colleagues did.
What?
Are you aware that there are no interviews or statements in the discovery having to deal with law enforcement speaking to Susan Lee?
No.
Okay. Did you read a report by Susan Lee where an officer spoke to Susan Lee?
Here we
No.
go.
So she is, as you heard Ms. Stifler argue, an alleged co-conspirator, correct?
I believe she was referring to Kim Jensen.
Well, in addition to another individual, correct? This one. Do you recall that?
I thought she was referring to Kim Jensen.
So you're the lead detective in this case, and you have text messages where they're allegedly looking for a hitman, and they call and they're texting someone. You got it right there, black and white, that they're texting a potential suitor for this hitman, and you never go and talk to the person who is the alleged person who they went to go looking for a hitman.
I believe the time that we were trying to locate her phone number had changed and we didn't have a good address for her. So we were not able to contact her at the time during the messages.
Okay, but just a minute ago, you said that you believe one of your
I do.
fellow officers interviewed her. So
I
now
did.
you can't find her?
I need to go back and check my notes to confirm. I did think that someone did have a conversation with her, but I would need to reference that.
Do you have your notes here today?
No, I do not.
You knew you were testifying in a capital death penalty case, and you didn't bring your notes?
I brought some notes, yes, but in reference to the testimony that I knew I was going to give,
Well, you knew you were going to testify about Susan Lee, right?
more in reference to Kim Jensen.
But you knew you were going to talk about Susan Lee, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't bring any notes having to do with Susan Lee.
No, I did not.
And you can't tell Judge Kite in any way, shape, or form whether any law enforcement officer from Jacksonville Police Department, or Jacksonville Beach Police Department, or any of the other cooperating officers in this investigation, which included multiple law enforcement agencies, ever spoke with Susan Lee.
As you stated, there are lots of agencies and there are lots of people who are helping with this investigation. I cannot tell you right now whether or not she was talked to or whether that was in a report. That's something that I would need to look into.
Okay? Now, I want to talk briefly about the night of the murder. Staying on the text messages. Never mind, I'll drop that. I wrote this down, I might as well ask you about it. Some of the messages about killing Jared included feeding him lard because he had, I guess, high blood sugar or cholesterol, high cholesterol.
Correct.
So, that was a joke, right?
I can't speak to their state of mind.
Do you have any evidence that these women were planning on pinning him down and feeding him lard?
No, I do not.
Okay, so as a detective, you took that as a joke, right?
No, in fact, I did not.
Okay, did you take the part about the Easter Bunny being involved as a joke?
Yes.
What about Chris Angel?
I believe they used Chris Angel to prove a point, not necessarily in a joking manner.
Okay, but you don't know that for sure, correct?
That's fair.
And in fact, that's because you don't know these two women at all, correct?
Outside of this investigation, no.
Okay, and in fact, when you spoke with KJ, she in fact told you that this was all, that's just the way they spoke, correct?
Initially, yes.
And we're gonna get to that. But basically that they sit around and they just talk, that this is kind of just the way they talk. They, I guess, have somewhat of a morbid sense of humor, correct?
Correct.
Now, and these are, as displayed by the evidence that's been submitted, a majority back in 2015, 16, and 17, correct?
That's correct.
You don't have any text messages about hiring a hitman in 2021 or anything like that, or 2020, correct?
No, I do not.
Okay. Now, again, and then I did ask you about this already. You mentioned that, I guess it was your testimony that you didn't initially look at Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez as suspects until much later on, correct?
That's correct.
And that's even though Jared's brother came in quite early on, correct?
Correct.
And told you about this alleged hitman statement, correct?
That's correct.
So she goes to visit Jared's brother and tells him, I'm going to hire a hitman to kill your brother, correct?
Correct.
And that's also in between the time that he was telling you he had a dream that included a premonition about this case, correct?
That's correct. Oh, this was after, that was a secondary meeting
Okay.
after the first one.
But he wanted you to follow up on leads having to do with his dream, correct? Or he thought it was important for him to tell you about his dreams.
That was correct.
Okay. And did you do any follow up on his dreams?
His dreams, the things that he referred to us were things that were already part of our investigation.
Okay. So you didn't take that seriously. I take it.
I mean, I'm not a person who analyzes dreams. He thought that they were important to him and they were referencing things that we were aware of.
Got it. Okay. So now going back to the night of Mr. Brightigan's demise, Shanna Gardner was at home that evening, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's what your investigation led you to, correct?
Yes.
You were aware that there is not a single text message between Shanna Gardner and Henry Tennant that exists anywhere on this earth, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that.
And of course, you never found any phone call records between Shannon Gardner and Henry Tennant at any point in time.
That's
Yep.
correct.
I'm sorry?
That I reviewed. That's correct.
Okay. How about some other officer from some other agency? Anybody else find ever a phone record between Henry Tennant and Shannon Gardner?
From all of her known devices to Henry Tennant during the time period that we looked at, there were no phone calls for Shannon Gardner.
And in fact, Henry Tennant told you that he never even met Shannon Gardner, correct?
I don't know that he said he never met her, but he did indicate that he had talked through Mario. That his main point of contact was Mario.
Well, let's be clear about that. His sole point of contact was with Mario. In fact, the only time he ever laid eyes on Shannon Gardner was when she was sitting in a car and they waved at each other, correct?
She indicated that she had met him 5 years earlier, but I don't know the total. I don't know what their encounter
Okay.
was.
But fair to say, you have nothing to contradict that the only interaction this person had with that person was that they waved at each other a couple years ago.
That's correct.
Now, there is no forensic evidence that, well, wait a minute. Ms. Gardner voluntarily gave you her DNA, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's no DNA that was recovered from any of the items of evidence that came back to Ms. Shannon Gardner's DNA, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, you're convinced that, of course, that she was not anywhere near the homicide scene, correct?
That's correct.
And the dry runs that were talked about earlier, you're aware too that Shannon Gardner had nothing or was nowhere near those prior dry runs, correct?
I can't state that one way or another, but I don't have any evidence that she was a part of them.
Okay. And in fact, Mr. Tennant, who you do have access to, told you that that never happened, of course, right?
He never mentioned Shannon Gardner, and as far as the dry run is concerned,
And that's something as a detective you would have asked though, right?
of course.
Okay. So fair to say, she's not part of that evidence, not part of any of these other things. But let me ask you this. You mentioned this bank account and the money. You're aware that, as we covered earlier, that all the fighting between Jared and Shannon in the courts had to do with money, right?
As you stated.
If I'm wrong, she'll correct it, okay?
Okay.
Having said that, sir, you're aware that Mario Fernandez became the trustee of that trust, that irrevocable trust, correct?
Yes.
So basically, he was able to move money around as needed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that account that these checks were written from, there's not one single check from that account signed by Shannon Gardner, is there?
Not that I'm aware of.
And in fact, there's no ATM withdrawals where you have Shannon Gardner pulling out money from that account, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and you're also aware that Mario had his own properties, correct?
I know that he individually owned some properties, yes.
Okay, and you also know that they kept separate bank accounts as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I think it's your theory, it's the prosecution's theory that this man, Henry Tennant, committed a murder with no payment, right?
I mean, he committed it.
No payment up front.
That's what he testified to.
Kind of gave the alleged co-conspirators a pass on that, right?
You have to talk to him about that.
Okay, well, I'm sure I will one day, but as it relates to this specific piece of evidence, and then the only payment that he received was 3% of the alleged money that he was going to make off of killing an individual, off of killing Mr. Brightigan. Is that correct?
At this time, yes, that's what he said he received.
And he didn't even get that 3% until a couple months after the murder.
That's correct.
And that's when allegedly Mr. Mario Fernandez said, "Thank you for the murder. I'll just cut you a check." Right?
I don't know.
Okay. And he cut him a check for $5,000, right?
I was not present during that interaction. I can only tell you what he did receive.
But that's what Mr. Tennant told him, right?
That he had received 3 checks. The 5,000 of it was for the first man from the homicide.
Right. And he also told you that he gave him another $5,000, but that was for work, legitimate work that he had actually done for Mr. Fernandez, correct?
Yes, sir.
So there's money going back and forth between Mr. Tennant and Mario Fernandez that's absolutely legitimate, correct?
Per his testimony, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about this, these burner phones and the iCloud stuff. I'm going to kind of loop them together if I can. You're aware, because you read the text messages, that Ms. Shannon Gardner, during the course of your investigation, was represented by counsel, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you know that Ms. Shannon Gardner hired a very distinguished legal counsel in this community, correct?
I actually hired an attorney. I'm
I'm
not
aware that he's the former president of the Florida Bar.
I'm not personally familiar with him.
Okay, and you're also aware, based on the text messages and your investigation, that he actually took Ms. Gardner's phone from her, correct?
That's what was indicated, yes.
Okay, and that he had advised her, or there's something in the text messages that mentioned getting a different phone, correct?
That she needed a second phone because her phone had been taken to be downloaded, yes.
And that is why there was the issue with the iCloud, correct? She couldn't access, she's got a new phone, so couldn't access that, correct?
That is not how I perceived it. I perceived it that she did not want things downloaded to the new phone that were on her old phone.
Okay. Fair to say, in today's day and age, a cell phone is a very intimate thing, right?
Absolutely.
In fact, we don't go anywhere without them.
Fair.
Some people's cell phones might be a little more interesting than others,
Fair.
right? And many people, if not a majority of folks, have very intimate things on their cell phone, correct?
Yes.
And that includes when they use those cell phones to have conversations with people they love, right?
Yes.
They don't want anyone listening in on their phone conversations, right?
That's correct.
And that includes people who are absolutely innocent of any crime whatsoever, correct?
That's fair.
In fact, you wouldn't want me listening in on your phone calls, would you?
Absolutely not.
Okay, you wouldn't want me going through your phone, right?
Nope.
Okay, and you wouldn't want me going through your iCloud, right?
No.
Okay, so now I want to talk about these very damning statements that you talked about that Ms. Stifler put up on the PowerPoint presentation that were allegedly told to you by KJ. When this occurred, this was after she had testified at the grand jury, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. This in fact was in July 2023, correct?
Correct.
And this was a situation where you went to her, or where law enforcement went to her and stopped her outside of a Publix, correct?
That's correct.
And you told her, you need to come with us, correct?
We served her with a subpoena.
Okay. And at that time, you wanted to drive her to the state attorney's office, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you did that, she didn't want to go with you in your car, right?
She asked if she could drive her own car, and we indicated that she could come with us, and we'd bring her back to her car, and she agreed to that.
And she went in her car or she went with you?
I actually don't recall. If we drove her, she drove herself.
Okay. You wouldn't know if you took her in the back of a police car or in a police car?
It was almost a year ago. It's a minor detail. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, the details didn't turn out to be so minor, correct?
As far as her transportation to the state attorney's office, I would consider that a minor detail.
Okay. Interacting with a critical witness in a homicide is not, right?
Correct.
And you knew that she was a critical witness because you had all the text messages, right?
Correct.
And you knew she was a critical witness because you had in fact spoken to her previously, correct?
Correct.
And you knew that she was extremely close to Shannon Gardner, your number one suspect, correct?
That's correct.
And you get to the state attorney's office and you place her in the room, do you know?
She was put in a conference room, yes.
And in this conference room, there was conveniently several posters and things on the wall indicating that she was a co-conspirator in this case, correct?
There were her own text messages.
Right. You put them up there for her to see, and you walk out the room, and you allow her to sit there and ponder why the police are getting her out of Publix and taking her to the state attorney's office, and now she's looking at her own text messages about killing someone, correct?
Correct.
I saw Ms. Stifler's PowerPoint, and they were just statements in quotes that this Stifler or someone at the state attorney's office put in the computer, correct? You saw that while you during your direct testimony, right?
This is
Yes.
money.
Okay. We never heard these statements, correct?
Are you saying that I never heard them or
We
that?
didn't play them for Judge Kite or anybody else here today.
No, I do not personally have a recording of the statements.
Okay. In fact, she
Wait.
wasn't recorded, right?
To my knowledge, she was not, no.
Wait, what? Wait a second. I'm over here like trying to do like a million things. That's what I asked you guys earlier. I was like, wait a second. Who made these notes? Like, what is this shit? What is he testifying to? Like, why aren't we just playing these phone calls?
Very damning statements that you talked about that Ms. Stifler put up on the PowerPoint presentation that were allegedly told to you by KJ. When this occurred, this was after she had testified at the grand jury, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. This in fact was in July 2023, correct?
Correct?
And this was a situation where you went to her, or where law enforcement went to her and stopped her outside of a Publix, correct?
That's correct.
And you told her, you need to come with us, correct?
We served her with a subpoena.
Okay. And at that time, you wanted to drive her to the state attorney's office, correct?
Yes.
And when you did that, she didn't want to go with you in your car, right?
She asked if she could drive her own car, and we indicated that she could come with us, and we'd bring her back to her car, and she agreed to that.
Did she went in her car or she went with you?
I actually don't recall. If we drove her, she drove herself.
Okay. You wouldn't know if you took her in the back of a police car or in a police car?
It was almost a year ago. That's a minor detail. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, the details didn't turn out to be so minor, correct?
As far as her transportation to the state attorney's office, I would consider that a minor detail.
Okay. Interacting with a critical witness in a homicide is not, right?
Correct.
And you knew that she was a critical witness because you had all her text messages, right?
Correct.
And you knew she was a critical witness because you had in fact spoken to her previously, correct?
Correct.
And you knew that she was extremely close to Shannon Gardner, your number one suspect, correct?
That's correct.
And you get to the state attorney's office and you place her in a room, do you not?
She was put in a conference room, yes.
And in this conference room, there was conveniently several posters and things on the wall indicating that she was a co-conspirator in this case, correct?
There were her own text messages.
Right. You put them up there for her to see, and you walk out the room, and you allow her to sit there and ponder why the police are getting her out of Publix and taking her to the state attorney's office, and now she's looking at her own text messages about killing someone, correct?
Correct.
I saw Ms. Stifler's PowerPoint, and they were just statements in quotes that Ms. Stifler or someone at the state attorney's office put in the computer, correct? I saw that while you during your direct testimony, right?
Yes.
Okay. We never heard these statements, correct?
Are you saying that I never heard them or
We
that?
didn't play them for Judge Kite or anybody else here today.
No, I do not personally have a recording of the statements.
Okay. In fact, she wasn't recorded, right?
To my knowledge, she was not, no.
Wait, what?
Wait, you're there, right?
I was there for part of her testimony.
Okay.
I was not in the room the entire time.
Detective Lamont was there, correct?
Yes.
So when you say, wait, you said that you were there for part of her testimony. Would you go out for a cigarette, a coffee break, what?
She initially met with the state, and then I met with her, and then we all met together.
Okay. And when she allegedly made these incredible statements about Mario and his ability to commit crimes and the fact that he had told Shannon he was going to kill Jared if he wanted her to, or all of these different statements, neither you nor Detective Lamont ever took out a recording device to record these critical case-breaking statements, right?
No, we did not.
What the fuck?
Was Ms. Stifler there?
Yes.
Did she take out a recording device
Nothing.
and automatically start recording these incredibly damning statements?
Not that I'm aware of.
Was Mr. Mizrahi there?
I believe so.
Yes,
Did he take out a recording device?
Not that I'm aware of.
You all have cell phones, right?
Y'all had cell
Yes.
phones.
Does your cell phone allow you to record?
This
Yes.
is awesome.
So-
Fuck yeah.
And none of you thought about taking out or
This is
your cell
sick.
phone and recording KJ while she's making these case-breaking statements?
I mean, like, we're talking
No, I
like,
did not think of the recorder.
what?
And that was because at this point in time, you take her from Publix, you put her in a room where you're basically pointing the finger at her as being a co-conspirator to murder. You let her think about it for a while. Then all of you started questioning her quite furiously. Wouldn't you agree?
No, no.
What?
Right nicely?
It was a civil conversation.
You didn't want to record because
Wasn't
what you guys
contentious
were
in any
saying
way,
to
shape, or
her.
form, is what your testimony is going to be.
I believe the contention was the fact that she had initially given statements that were clearly a lie.
What?
According to you, right?
Yes.
According to you.
In fact, you don't know, well, first of all, we have no way of knowing what she said other than what was put in a PowerPoint presentation by Ms. Stifler, correct?
Correct.
Dude, she made it seem like that.
Did you take notes during this interesting conversation?
I did take some notes, yes.
Okay. And
Where are
do
they?
you have them with you here today?
No, I did not.
What the
Okay.
fuck?
Did you turn them over to Ms. Stifler?
No, I did not.
And as far as the case file and the discovery is concerned, there's not a single record of these conversations ever taking place, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Despite the fact that the most senior people in the investigation and the prosecution were present and received the most damning information to date, correct?
We were there to hear the information, but it was not recorded.
Why?
And at no point when things started getting good, you changed your mind and started recording.
No, I did not.
Get the fuck out of here, man.
Detective Lamont, is he a senior? Is he senior to you?
No, we were same rank.
Same rank, okay. Does he have more experience than you?
We were we've had very similar experience in time.
Unbelievable.
Was it his first homicide investigation too?
I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, you guys worked together quite a
You
few
never-
times prior to that, right?
Talk about it.
He was in the unit prior to me, so I can't speak to his experience prior to that.
He's never shared with you war stories or any stories about his experience.
Yes, sir.
These guys are gonna go down in flames, man.
Now,
Down in flames.
getting back to the day of the murder, Shanna Gardner, you came to find out that Shanna Gardner, in fact, went to Walmart that evening, correct?
That's correct.
And this was while the children were with Jared Bradigan, correct?
Yes, sir.
Before I go any further, I want to clear something up. There's no communications whatsoever that indicate that where Jared Bradigan indicated to either Shanna or Mario Fernandez that he was bringing his small 2-year-old child with him for date night, correct?
I believe that she was brought as a matter of routine.
That's not the question I asked. Okay? There's nothing that you have in terms of communications or evidence that indicate that he informed Shanna Gardner or Mario Fernandez or anyone close to them that he was bringing his child that evening.
That's correct.
And in fact, you never read any text messages that indicated that he was bringing his child to date night, correct?
Correct.
Now, getting back to the night of the murder, Shanna Gardner went to a Walmart that evening, correct?
Correct.
And this is while Jared is with the children, right?
That's correct.
And he's supposed to return the children at 7:45, correct?
Correct.
And Shanna checks out at the Walmart at 7:20 p.m., correct?
Around then, I don't remember the exact time.
And you're aware that, of course, the Walmart's approximately 15 minutes away from their home, correct?
Give or take.
Okay. And that would, 7:20, check out, you know that from the receipt, right?
Correct.
And let's say she's done, makes her payment, picks up the bags in the shopping cart, walks to her car, then puts the bags into the car, gets in her car. That could be a couple minutes, right?
Okay.
So that amount of time plus the 15 minutes puts her awfully close to even not being present when Jared Bradigan drops off the children, right?
She and the kids all indicated that she was in the kitchen cooking.
That's not what I asked you. That puts it quite close to her missing the drop off, right?
Sure.
And if there's traffic, or she would have been delayed as little as 10 minutes, she would have missed it completely, correct?
I guess it's possible.
She would have missed her alibi had she not have made it on time, correct?
I mean, it's hard to say that she would miss her alibi.
Okay. You won't give me that, right?
No.
All right. But you know where I'm getting at, don't you?
I understand the point you're trying to make.
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to, just made it, right? She was very close to missing the drop off, correct?
Based upon what you stated as far as what kind of mother she was, I hardly doubt that she would not be home by the time her children were being dropped off.
I would agree with you, but it's not, again, the question I asked. The
I guess it's possible that traffic or a crash or a road closure or a number of delays could have cost her to get home late.
Okay. Now, you testified that when the children got home, that they never saw Mario, right?
They stated that they thought they saw Mario, but when the psychologist asked them if they ever actually saw him, they stated, well, we think we saw him because his game console was on.
And that included the boy, right?
As far as I recall, both of them made a similar statement.
Okay. And the purpose of you telling Judge Kite that, of course, is to show that it's possible Mario wasn't even there, right?
It is possible, yes.
Okay. And in fact, that was the purpose of the statement, right?
Yes.
Okay. I want to play that portion of the child CPT interview so we can know exactly what he said. Okay? I can have just a moment, Judge.
Is it one of the exhibits? Mr. Cody, is it one of the exhibits?
Judge, it's not, we were unaware, the detective, John will make this, I can burn it to a disk and bring it tomorrow to court for you.
Is there any objection? Ms. Depler?
So playing just a portion of it on an hour and a half interview, don't have context. I don't have an objection to it. I
Well,
just
you can
redirect
complete it.
on it.
If that, like, you can complete it if you want, or play other. Did you alert what you're playing?
Yes, this is the child's.
No, I mean, to this date.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, why don't you-
I didn't, during the break, I said, that's really.
Mr. Cody, will you let them know what portion at least that they know?
We're playing at 1 hour, 23 minutes, Judge.
And that's all you, Judge, I should have.
That's all.
What did you eat, how was it, and it was all fun and all that, and then we went to bed, and then the next morning, that's when I found out.
But what was when you got home that night, what was your mom doing?
I think she was cooking. She was on the counter texting people.
Okay. Was Mario home when you got home?
Yeah, he plays video games. He was playing his video games at his desk.
Did you actually see him playing his video games, or you think that's what he's doing?
I mean, he had his headphones, he had the controller, and then I heard, fire, because we play Call of Duty. It's a shooting game.
Okay.
And so I'm pretty sure he was. I heard the thing. He had his gaming headphones, he had the controller, so I'm pretty sure he was.
Okay.
And I think I looked over one time after I talked, and then I saw him playing video games.
Okay.
So I don't think he was doing anything.
You heard the child. mention
Damn.
That Mr. Fernandez had on headphones, correct?
Damn.
He mentioned that he had applications of playing the game. He said, I'm sure he was. I think he was. Never at any time did he indicate that he actually saw Mario Fernandez.
Wait,
I'm going to get
what?
to that in a minute, but please try to answer my question. You heard him say that, correct? That he had his headphones?
Yes.
Okay. You also heard him saying that he heard Mario saying, I guess, left, or talk while he's playing the video game, correct?
Did he hear Mario or did he hear the game console or someone else talking in it?
Well, he said, I could hear left, or whatever.
I'm just saying it wasn't clear if he did or didn't hear Mario.
It was quite clear to you when he says that he saw him, right?
No, sir. I did not take that as someone who said that he actually saw Mario Fernandez.
I will just replay that last portion.
Replay it, please.
We're not
This
disputing.
is fucking crazy.
My name's Casey Lee. I'm from the Coast Child Protection Team. Today I'll be interviewing Liam.
The body was clipped. If they knew what was clipped.
Did you actually see him playing his video games, or you think that's what he's doing?
I mean, he had his headphones, he had the controller, and then I heard, fire, because we play Call of Duty. It's a shooting game.
Okay.
And So I'm pretty sure he was. I heard the thing. He had his gaming headphones. He had the controller. So I'm pretty sure he was.
Okay.
And I think I looked over one time after I talked, and then I saw him playing video games.
Okay.
You heard that, right? I saw him playing video games.
He said, I'm pretty sure I looked over and saw him playing video games.
Saw.
You heard
Saw.
that,
Yes, I heard the statement.
right? Okay. That's
How do you do this to
different than what
kids?
you told Judge Keitel in the direct examination, correct?
I don't believe it is. I don't think that he was sure whether Mario was there or not.
All right.
He wasn't sure.
Now,
Because you're
sir,
asking if he was playing video games. Hold
I
on.
want to talk about
No.
Uh,
No, this is what he wouldn't be sure on. Like, you're saying, well, was he playing video games? Well, I mean, I saw, like, he was saying, right. Like, it's about, like, well, are you sure that he was he there? Why don't you tell your people to ask some better questions? Like, oh, did you, like, so he was there? He was home? Like, who's questioning? What the But what the kid isn't sure of is, again, then you're asked, like, that's about, like, oh, are you sure that he was playing video games versus, like, are you there? Because yeah, he's there. What was he doing? Well, I think he was playing video. He had his remote. He had his this. He was right. Fire. Like, then you're asked, that's what you're making him question. If, like, well, are you sure he was playing a game versus just in that room? Well, and that's why the kid was like, well, I saw he had his controller. He had this, he had that. Like, he had these things. He was saying these things. I mean, unless he's just pretending to play, I guess. But this guy, legit, this guy right here, problems. And Jose Baez is hot about it because he's lying. They're lying. Who has somebody that's so like, hey, we're going to have this person come down. Like, we just took her out of Publix for this. Okay. Like, we just took her out of Publix for this. And you're going to bring her down. Stifler, the prosecutor was in there. They're in there. And none of y'all are recording this. And she's coming with this heat. Like, no, we're just going to say it. And it's just we're just going to say this is what happened. Like, why? It's 2024, 2023. What? Why? Why would you even mess with that? Well, I'll tell you why you don't. I'll tell you why you don't record. It's not even about what they may say. It's about what you're doing to possibly even make that person say that stuff. What are you doing? What are you threatening this person with? What are you saying to them? Is that not what you don't want to see being recorded? But I think that in today's day and age, you don't have it on record because there's all these ways to have it on record, then you don't get to use it. Do your job. How about this? Why did Jacksonville Beach Police Department put this guy in charge of it? It was a high profile, like, why is he the lead investigator? Like, hey, Brightigan, this is what we think of you. Here you go. I mean, I guess you're going to say, well, the guy has to start somewhere. Well, put him on with a veteran. Hey, you're going to lead this, but I'm going to be here to make sure that you're doing the right things. I mean, what the heck? But clearly this guy isn't ready because wait, it gets worse. I saw. He said, I saw.
This arrest of Henry Tenen and the Intrepid, which is the PR firms, that whole testimony that you covered earlier. You recall that testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's go back to the night of August 18, 2022. That was the night
August
that you
18th.
decided to arrest Henry Tenen, correct?
Correct.
Now, the way you did that was you knew he was a habitual traffic offender, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And he was pulled over under a ruse that he was going to be arrested. And the reason you guys were interested in him was because he was a habitual traffic offender, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Then that was at 12 a.m. on August 18th, 2022. Right about that time, right around midnight.
No, it was early in the morning.
Okay. It wasn't at night?
No, sir.
Okay. How early in the morning?
It was like 5:30 in the morning. 5:30.
Okay.
I don't know the time. I don't remember the time of the exact traffic stop, but it was very early in the morning.
I'll double check. 1 second. to say it was 4 a.m., right? Does that sound about right?
Like I said, I don't remember the exact time, but it was very early in the morning. I'll give you that.
Okay. So around this time, you had already gone to several of Mr. Fernandez's tenants and questioned them, correct? You and other officers?
We talked to one other tenant.
Okay. And this is where you first saw the truck, right?
No, sir.
Well, there was a situation where you were speaking to a tenant. Well, I don't know if it was you, but an officer was investigating this case and was speaking to a gentleman who was a tenant, correct?
Lamont
correct.
was doing it.
And that's when Mr. Tennant pulled up at some point, correct?
That's correct.
And there was some questioning about the truck, right?
That's yes.
Okay.
Yes,
And
Johns,
that's
you know
kind of
this.
when Mr. Tennant got on your radar, right?
He didn't get on our radar until we had located a tire at the house.
Okay. And
Which was before the truck pulled up, you fucking idiot.
while you do this investigation and subsequent to you actually arresting Mr. Tennant, you go and speak to one of Mario Fernandez's tenants, correct?
Correct. Mr. Tennant's roommate.
Correct. And that's at 5:30 in the morning, that same night, right?
Morning, yes, sir.
Okay, excuse me, morning. You didn't mention that to Judge Kite, right?
No.
Okay, so you're also monitoring Mr. Tennant's roommate and his communications with Mario Fernandez, right?
We did request tolls for him.
Okay, in fact, what ended up happening was you found out that there was a call between the roommate and Mr. Fernandez at 7:20.
Yeah,
2
let's
a.m.,
get into
correct?
that truth.
That
Let's
same
get
day.
that truth.
I don't remember the exact time, but yes, there was a call.
Yes. Wait, so let's back all this up. Remember I was flipping out about that whole August 18th? I was like, wait a second. So let's get to that truth about August 18th. So you were monitoring who? Oh, wait. Tenant's roommates? The other tenant? Okay. And so at 7-ish in the morning, there was a call. Okay. Yeah, let's get to that.
And how many times as a homicide detective have you gone and let somebody's roommate notify that their roommate was arrested?
Part of the reason that we went and notified him is that Henry Tennant was driving his vehicle, and we wanted to give him an opportunity to retrieve his vehicle.
Right, but you're aware that as soon as, not even an hour and a half after you notified the roommate, who was someone that you were questioning previously about the truck, that
So let me make sure you guys got this right here. They went and notified the roommate to say, hey, we arrested your friend. When has that ever happened? That's never happened to me. I've had roommates arrested. That's never happened to me. Okay. In college. All right. No.
he made a phone call to Mr. Fernandez that same day.
Correct.
And in fact, you told him that Tennant's truck was used in the murder, correct?
I don't remember exactly what was said to him or not.
Okay. You sure you don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. Fair to say the reason you did this to get them talking, right? To see where that takes you.
We were not monitoring their communications at this time.
But you were able to go back and check your phone records, right?
Yes. But
And-
Mr. Ordway wasn't using his own phone. He was using someone else's phone to stereotypically talk to Mario Fernandez. So I'm not sure.
Right, and that's what you found out, right? That he was actually communicating with Mario Fernandez after you guys had gone there and told him that Tennant was arrested, right?
Yes.
And that the truck was used in the murder, right?
I don't know the communication as far as that was concerned. I was not there for that.
Okay, but the whole reason you told all of us, including Judge Kite, that Miss Gardner called the PR people, that they were concerned about the truck, that there's no way they would have known, you conveniently left out the fact that you had actually gone to this gentleman's house and told him that Tennant was arrested and that the truck was used in the murder, correct?
There again, I don't know what was said to Mr. Ordway exactly. But either way, isn't it kind of odd that you would call and let your landlord know that your roommate was arrested?
Well, remember, I get to ask the questions here. And you don't,
Sorry, I
right?
apologize.
Okay.
Not when you're doing all the stuff that you were doing leading up to it. I would be letting somebody know that, like,
Okay.
the cops
Now,
have
as
been
the
around
detective,
here. They're
of course,
asking all
you
these
get to review all of
questions.
the, reports in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
Including those of your partner, Detective Lamont,
Yes.
right? I want to clarify, I know you seem a bit unsure about whether you guys had informed the roommate as to whether the truck was used in the murder. Remember, you seemed a little unsure of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would it refresh your recollection if I showed you Detective Lamont's report where it says, where it lays it out for you?
Okay.
May I proceed?
Yes.
I want to direct your attention first to the date and time of the report, which is August 19th of 22. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And page 2, where it states, the roommate's name was advised tenant's truck was used in the murder of Jared Brightigan. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Does that refresh your recollection as to whether the fact that you had informed the roommate the night of Mr. Tennant's arrest that his truck was used in the murder?
Based upon the report you showed me, that yes, the officers did inform Ordway that the truck was used in the homicide.
You say the officer, you're referring to
You're your partner.
Yes.
Your fucking
Detective
partner.
Lamont, right?
Yes.
Basically, the second.
Your
I don't know how
partner.
you guys do. Are you guys equal, or he's second in command here?
I'm the lead and he is the co.
Okay. So fair to say, he's going to tell you everything that he's doing in your case, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Including something as important as telling a roommate that they just made an arrest on perhaps the biggest case in Jacksonville, right?
It was a busy time for us right then, and I can't say
What?
we just arrested Tim. And
Look at
I
his
was not aware of
answers.
his exact verbiage that he told to Mr. Ordway.
And that's not something you normally do, right? To leak to potential witnesses critical information on a murder investigation, right? That's not something you do often.
I mean, it was public knowledge that a truck was used in the murder.
But it was public knowledge that Henry Tennant's truck was used in the murder, right?
I think based upon the previous interactions that we had with Mr. Ordway, he had a fairly good idea that that truck was used.
Wait,
But
what?
the question again,
What were you
was it
saying to this
was
man?
public knowledge that Mr. Tennant's truck was used in the murder, correct?
Correct.
And that's not something you do. You would agree that that's not good police practice to go around telling witnesses what's going on in a murder case, right?
Right.
I think at the time we were
Listen to him.
looking for cooperation from Mr. Ordway.
Oh.
And so we believed him to be involved in this. So I
We
don't
believe
think
him
it
to
was
be
from a
involved.
perspective
So
we're just
you're going to
giving
tell
you,
somebody that you think is
we're
involved?
leaking information about our case. It was an effort to gain his cooperation.
So now you remember, and now you have knowledge of not only the fact that you told him about the truck being used in the murder, but why.
I didn't tell
Thank
him I
you.
wasn't there. I told you that.
Okay.
Then what do you
But now you know why. Now you're kind of recalling why, right?
Yeah. Get him,
I'm saying
Jose.
why it's likely that the officers told him that.
And you
Get
knew
him.
before you took the stand today that Mr. Ordway had called just an hour late. Well, actually, he made several calls immediately, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Fernandez didn't answer the phone, right?
I don't remember exactly.
But the third call, there was a, I think,
Get him,
38-minute
Jose.
conversation, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And you knew that conversation occurred before you took the stand today and told us that there's no way that Shanna Gardner would have known or Mario Fernandez would have known that the truck was used in the murder, when you, in fact, had advised a witness of such a fact, correct? You knew that before taking the stand today.
Mr. Ordway was advised of the drug. No, I did not know that before today.
You didn't know.
I did not know that specific conversation happened until you showed me the report.
Okay. You just said a moment ago that it refreshed your recollection that that in fact occurred, correct?
No, sir. You indicated that. It did not.
And you agree with me, sir?
No, sir.
So you said no, that doesn't refresh my recollection?
I'm indicating you that Mr. Ordway had knowledge of this case and that us telling him about the truck was not the same as their leaking information. I did not have specific knowledge of what you showed me, or did not remember what you showed me until you showed it to me.
So you're essentially clarifying your prior statement when I asked you if it refreshed your recollection as to whether police had notified Mr. Ordway of the truck being used in the murder, right?
I do not remember reading that before today, is what I'm saying.
Now, you would agree that this report was turned over in the course of the discovery, right?
Yes, sir.
And that, of course, the prosecutors would have this information, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. I wouldn't have it unless they have it, right?
Correct.
You don't give me reports, you have them give it to me, right?
That's correct.
So if we're taking the stand and making representations that there's no way Ms. Gardner would have known that the truck of Henry Tennant was used in the murder at that point in time, or talking to the PR people, it's not true, is it?
You're asking me to know what Ms. Gardner does and doesn't know. So in other words, I can't speak to that.
You were never questioned in any way, shape, or form about you or Detective Vermont or any other detective going to visit Mr. Tennant's roommate at 5:30 in the morning to tell him, hey, your roommate's truck was involved in the murder, correct? You weren't asked a single question about that, right?
About telling Mr. Ordway that?
Yes.
No.
Sir, you mentioned that there was animosity between Jared Brightigan and Shannon Gardner because he wanted the children to be brought up in Mormon faith, but she's not, correct?
That's correct.
And that source of contention was Ms. Gardner not wanting to have one of the children baptized, correct?
Correct.
Is it a fact, sir, that Ms. Gardner, in fact, encouraged and was fine and was very supportive in terms of the child being baptized?
I think on the surface, she made that representation to her child.
But it's also in the text messages that you reviewed in this investigation too, correct?
There were some text messages between her and Kim Jensen where she basically stated that she did agree to it, yes.
Okay. So that statement too is not exactly correct. Correct?
What do you mean?
She was in support. She supported the child in getting baptized, correct?
Yes, she gave her support, yes.
Now,
Damn.
you also mentioned,
What has this guy been honest about? What has this guy been honest about? Literally Jose Baez has a little pad out there, so we're just gonna go. Hey, I'm gonna be jumping all over, just because I'm gonna everything that you testified to here today. I have impeachment material. Okay, so why is this man lying? Why is he like spinning? What's going on here? And that's how bad you want Shannon Gardner to be the person that was involved with this versus that it could have just been Mario doing whatever the hell he did. And maybe finding out why Mario did it because she was going to be breaking up with him. And this is his way of keeping his latch on her and then always getting paid. So Mario is a loose cannon. But you're going to have to then we're Jose's just getting started.
that while the child's CPT interviews were going on, that Mario Fernandez decided to go to the bail and go to Canada. Is that pretty much what you testified to, more or less, through direct?
One of the children said he was going to Canada. I never indicated that he was going to Canada.
Wait,
Well,
what?
you testified about it, right?
I testified about his trip, yes.
Now, Ms. Gardner wasn't allowed to participate in the CPT interview, correct?
That's correct.
And she, in fact, wasn't present and didn't get to see it, correct?
Correct.
You didn't get, like we just saw that video, you never showed her that video, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And she would have no idea whether the children would have told the CPT person that Mario was or was not present the evening of the murder, correct?
I would assume that she discussed the interviews with him, but no, she would not have been present. She would not have acknowledged what they said.
And she would have no idea what those children told CPT, correct?
I'm sure she would by asking them.
Well, when in fact they were asked, when in fact, if in fact she asked them, she said she could, but we don't know that she did, correct? Are you on any?
No, I do not know if she did or not. However, there were statements that were made by Mr. Brightigan that the children were often coached. So
Mr. Wright never
Everybody-
told you that the children were coached what to do in a CPT interview, right?
correct.
What a
Um,
sick
Now,
bastard.
you also talked about
What? But Mr. Runner
this
also said
5-month
the guys.
period
Mr. Brightigan's
where
dead.
Ms. Gardner,
When did he tell you
were
that?
concerned about her fleeing, and she was traveling around all over the place, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Sir, you're aware that after, there was a gap between the arrest of Mr. Fernandez and Ms. Gardner, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this 5-month period is during that time, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so what you represented to us was that she was moving around and staying at an Airbnb in Tallahassee and then going other places, correct? Like Orlando? I don't think you mentioned that, right?
No, the only places that I know that she was at was
The Airbnb.
Tallahassee and Savannah.
Okay, and Savannah. Now, you're aware that Ms. Gardner's counsel at the time had in fact sent an email and had advised the state that Ms. Gardner was willing and able to surrender herself at any time should they decide to charge her, correct?
I am aware that email was sent, yes.
Okay, and at no time did either you or any other law enforcement officer or any prosecutors pick up the phone and call her counsel and say, hey, let's do without the TV show, bring her in, correct?
I'm not aware of that now.
And are you, well, you're not aware that that ever occurred, right?
I'm not aware that a phone call like that was ever made,
Right, no phone call was ever made, as far as you know.
as far as I know, yes.
And in fact, that was never a suggestion of yours, right?
No, it was not.
Okay, and in fact, you're aware as a police officer that when you do a takedown in someone's home, there are numerous officers that are armed, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's in fact occurred in this case,
Yes, sir.
and that there were children in that home,
Yes, sir.
and multiple officers stormed that home with assault rifles, correct?
I don't think they stormed them.
They went inside, yelled police, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
And things can go drastically wrong when that happens, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you put lives in danger when you do that, right?
Many lives are in danger when anytime that we do any type of operation.
It's a necessary risk that you have to take, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But nonetheless, lives are at risk, including those of children, right?
I do not believe that their lives were at risk.
But all of that risk could have been alleviated had someone picked up the phone and said, okay, Ms. Gardner, why don't you turn yourself in, right?
That would also give someone an opportunity to flee if they were going to.
Now, you're also aware, or are you aware, I should ask you, that the reason that Ms. Gardner was in Tallahassee and other places was that they were waiting to see if in fact she was going to be charged and that she wanted to be in the jurisdiction of the court?
I did not know why she was in the locations that she was in.
If that in fact is true, let's assume that for 5 months, she's going from Tallahassee, Orlando, Savannah, and renting places to stay there, to be close if she's charged. That's quite a large amount of effort and expense to avail themselves to the jurisdiction of the court. Would you agree?
I mean, I can't speak to what she was doing.
I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you, sir, that if in fact that's true, that the reason she's doing that is to be able to avail herself and turn herself in. That's an extreme amount of effort and expense. Wouldn't you agree?
Why would she not just come to the jurisdiction that the court is in?
Again, I get to ask the questions and you don't. But my question to you, I know you don't want to answer it, but I'm going to ask it again. You would agree that that's a lot of effort and expense, right?
I would agree that it would be a lot of effort and expense to rent a home for several weeks that you do not currently live in.
Okay. And you, of course, are aware that there was a significant amount of media coverage in this case at that time.
Yes, sir.
Especially focused on this woman after Mario Fernandez was arrested, right?
I can't speak to exactly what was focused on her, but overall, the case had a lot of media attention.
But the theme was, when's she getting arrested, right?
Honestly, God, I don't pay attention to the news.
But yet you leak stuff to them,
Occasionally, when it's necessary.
and you leak stuff to them specifically about this issue?
What do you
That
mean?
someone was getting arrested, specifically Mario?
Yes.
Judge, can I have the court's indulgence for a moment to see if I have any further questions?
All right, guys, this is a very, very big court case. This is a hearing for Shanna Gardner to be able to get bail, to be able to be with her kids and to take care of one of her kids who needs her really bad. So my take on all of this is that I think that she should be getting put her out on, $1 million, whatever. I don't think that she's a flight risk. I don't think she's a risk to any of us. But her children, you are innocent until proven guilty, but her children need her more than we, the public, need her to be, in prison, because I especially after these lies, holy shit. Whoa. So this is the Jared Bridegan, Shanna Gardner case. Jose Baez comes with some heat here. And again, she's accused of masterminding this murder for hire. Mario Saldana was her husband, her second husband. He was estranged. I personally believe, from everything that I've read, I have the whole discovery minus like I said, like autopsies and stuff like that. But my issue is I have a huge problem with Mario Saldana. I do not think that he is stable in terms of I believe that he would go and do whatever on his own and then hold it over somebody who has a ton of money through their family, and that you're just going to keep paying me. This hearing should have received way more coverage. 100. I cannot believe that people are not covering this case. I think it's actually nuts that they're not. They'll get on at the end, but I want to be here for everything that's going to transpire, because so many important pretrial motions and hearings go on, and that's what actually shapes the trial. But what the cops did in this situation, in this case, it's one thing hey, you can think whatever you want, but you got to go and prove it. And then all they proved to me so far is that every big opportunity they screwed up, the cops did in doing it. And maybe it has to do with the fact that the lead investigator, it's his first homicide. I don't know, but I don't know why you would ever put somebody like that in this situation. Come on, man. But yeah, this hearing happened a month ago. I did a huge breakdown on this case about a year ago. And then I did another update when I showed you every single police report that I had on this case. So I do have a little lineup. I think it's a lineup. I think it's a playlist. But yeah. And I do want to make this public service announcement. The moderators in my channel are people that are either moms or dads, aunts and uncles, grandparents, and nobody from my channel. They come in and they mod when they can. They're not required to mod. They come in and they will bop in and out, especially on the lives that I have that are longer. So when there's a ton of people in chat, it's also hard to see every single comment. So please bear with us, as we are humans, and that if we miss something or something like that, I can assure you that I do not tolerate people that would just flat out ignore you. But it can be as simple as missing something. If you said hi to somebody, because they go in and out, so they could be in, and then what they'll do is they'll take their phone sometimes, put it in their pocket. They're listening on their earbuds because they're cleaning the house, So I'm ultimately responsible for my channel, and I take all responsibility because I can see your comments just as much as they could. But also I do a lot of showing with Hector. I do a lot with showing documents. And you guys, I'm sorry. If I was to just pay attention to chat and everything that was going on in chat, and I could just here, I have nothing that I'm planning on talking about today. I could look at chat and say, okay, hey, whatever comes up. Okay, here, I'll use this. And that's going to be my talking point, for 2 minutes. Then I'll do this. Then I'll do this. But all my lives and my shows are geared around getting information out to people, unless I make it known that, hey, I'm doing a call-in show, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. But I can assure everybody here that we let people have their opinions until you attack a person. And We don't block just to block. We will delete comments that are inappropriate, but your comment gets deleted. Don't ask why it was deleted. Okay, it was deleted because it was deleted, and because we're not going to answer those type of questions. And I tell my mods not to answer those type of questions. It is what it is, right? But then if there's ever a mistake and something will happen because, hey, the chat's moving so fast and I hit something to try to, remove somebody's comment that's like above yours, or below yours. And then I end up like, blocking somebody and then I'll tell hey, can you unblock so-and-so but that's human, human error. And I like human error. Human error means that we're real. Timelines, body cams, receipts, all day, baby, all day. But I think what ended up happening is I wanted to monitor my son wanted to have and make YouTube shorts and stuff like that. And I think when I did that, it allowed that, and it was attached to my channel. When he was doing and pumping out all these little videos that he was making, I think it put my whole channel into a different morph. So I'm dealing with it behind and seeing if that's what's going on. And that I got pushed into my videos not being seen because they're labeled as kid only or something like that. So I'm looking at every different angle, but there's just no way that I do a Idaho 4 live and get 100 people in there. I was like, yeah, no way. That's just not happening. That's just when I'm getting emails left and right, when are you going to cover the Idaho 4 case? Well, literally the past 2 or 3 days, that's all I did was pump out Idaho 4 content. And so something's wrong, something's up. And if it's not as innocent as that, and if it's something that's more sinister, if there's anybody that gets to the bottom of it, it's going to be me. And I believe I will. So if you try to fuck with me, trust me, you ain't going to win. But I think this is a good stopping point. I have a huge live tonight at 7. Very, very special guest. So, that starts at 7 p.m. And it's going to be very, very triggering and intense. And it has everything to do with the Karen Reed, Sandra Birchmore mass stuff. So I'm going to stop here. Yes, I did not get an alert yesterday. Yeah, I know. Something's up. We'll get to the bottom of it. I'll get to the bottom of it within 24 hours because I will be making it known. But my guest is also a victim, so I'm hoping that people bring it. Also, nobody's gonna have to worry about this beep because I am being literally, I moved all my stuff to a different area in my lab so I can, because I don't want it for you guys. But the beep will be gone on Monday. We got people coming in here destroying the place. Literally, whatever it takes. I said, whatever it takes, you take down every wall. So, but this case is going to be something that obviously we're going to be, there's, as you guys can see, 2 hours and 15 more minutes, but probably at the speed I'm going to, I'm flying through because I'm trying to put on fast mode. But I want to end and leave with this. Jose Baez came out and he said, hey, journalists, you need to get over here. It was very similar to kind of what Delphi did. And he called his own press conference. Okay, Jose Baez doesn't do that. And I'm going to show you guys the beginning of it because it's important. But this press conference, let's see, Jose Baez. Here we go.
So, first off, my name is Jose Baez. I'm the lead defense attorney for Shanna Gardner in the state of Florida versus Shanna Gardner. So, first off, the reason I've asked you to come out here today is because a matter of great importance and public interest has arisen, and I think it's important for everyone to have a certain amount of transparency as to what's actually going on in this case. I will start by saying this is not something I do often. In fact, it's the first time I've outwardly spoken in this case. other than a few brief comments for which I was approached walking to my car previously. Other than that, I really make very few public statements about the case because I believe much of which should be done in the courtroom, except and unless there are matters of great public interest and importance. Having said that, I'll start off by telling you that my office has filed, or will be filing shortly today, a motion in this case advising the court of certain violations of Brady material, which is favorable evidence that was in the possession of the state and not turned over to the defense. Much of what the motion entails surrounds incidents and testimony that was elicited during the Arthur hearing, which is a bond hearing on May 15th of this year. Now, having said that, that is an opportunity for those of you who know or don't know, is an opportunity for the state to put on a certain amount of evidence to be able to show that the accused should be held without bond pending the outcome of the case. Now, during the course of that hearing, we learned of a meeting that took place between the two prosecutors involved in this case. One of them I see here today. I presume he's going to open himself up for questions after, and I would invite that, of course, to hopefully respond to some of the issues that occurred in this matter. First off, it's dealing with the testimony of Detective Johns, who during the course of that testimony elicited or spoke of certain text messages between a individual whose initials are KJ and another person's whose initials are SL. This name had never been made known to us previously up until the night before the hearing. We objected to these text messages from coming in, and that was overruled. So they did come in a matter of course. We don't take issue.
Remember I told you guys at the beginning of this broadcast, I said, guys, remember how that was overruled? And this ended up, in my opinion, helping in the end the defense, because the stuff whatever came out. But that would be the J exhibit that got labeled Exhibit 9. And they were the text messages that were from 2015, 2016. Kim Jensen, Shanna Gardner. And then there was another woman that was named Sue. Okay, SL is Sue. Leave the last name out.
With that, Detective Johns testified that he never spoke, that he believed one of his other officers spoke with this witness, and that he did not. When pressed, he later stated that the witness had changed her phone number and they had a hard time getting a hold of her. The SL was actually watching the hearing at that time and was outraged by the lies told by Detective Johns in this matter. And I'll remind everyone, this is a death penalty case where the state is attempting to utilize the color of law to kill another human being. So, as part of his testimony, number one, it turns out that Miss SL did not change her phone number. She has the same phone number and has had the same phone number since 2014.
2014.
So that was an outright lie. In addition to that, no other detective spoke with Miss SL. It was Detective Johns who, in fact, spoke with Miss SL. That was his second lie, and that was
Oh my
God! Now, these are
God.
clear, unambiguous, straight-up lies.
Lies.
Made by the lead detective involving a critical witness who was allegedly being solicited for to hire a hitman for murder. As it turns out, the actual truth was that this was a running joke between the two witnesses that I previously mentioned, who apparently witness SL's husband is an African American, and there was a member who she worked with who had
it's like black people are so bad.
Approached her and made an offensive comment, asking whether he knew any individuals who were involved with crime. So naturally, amongst friends, they continued to chide her, and that's specifically what was done within those text messages. They were text messages made in jest, and as you also heard during the course of that hearing, there was this meeting between the two lead prosecutors as well as the two lead detectives with KJ. KJ also got to view this hearing, and as it turns out, was equally enraged by some of the lies told by Detective Johns and some of the key facts omitted
I
by the
love it.
prosecution, such as the statements and many of the text messages that were displayed in an attempt to keep Shanna Gardner in custody. They were told specifically by KJ that many of them were made in jest and they were not taken seriously by anyone. And in fact, many of the individuals who were surrounding this case knew that. This critical information, which is exculpatory information, was never disclosed to the defense. And it wasn't until after the Arthur hearing that we were able to uncover that these statements, for which are non-recorded and no police report was done. I think that's worth mentioning here because I don't stand here and take this situation lightly. I realize that I am being highly critical of both prosecution and law enforcement in this case, and it does not come easy for me. But I hold them to the highest standards as we all expect our elected officials and our public servants to act. And in this situation, that critical information was not disclosed. And as you saw during the hearing, I was highly critical of the fact that they did not record this meeting and that they did not write a police report stating as such. So, my position is simple. Even held in the best of lights, with the best intentions, completely honest intentions, if you have 4 highly trained individuals getting a statement from the most critical witness in the case, you record it. Otherwise, you're incredibly incompetent. And perhaps they should be fired for that reason. I would want police officers investigating a crime that I believe is incredibly important, especially one to me, to do their job appropriately and competently. And clearly, that's not done, and nothing's being said or done about it. And that's a big problem. You can't expect to hold our public officials accountable if you don't hold them accountable. Let me finish. There's more information I have to disclose. So you have the situation where this secret meeting is taking place with no recordings and no police reports written on the meeting and no disclosure to the defense when we are trying to seek release from pretrial custody, which are founded on constitutional principles, such as the presumption of innocence, such as having your day in court, such as holding the government to its full burden. All of these are ignored and being circumvented. Just because it's popular doesn't make it right. And furthermore, what did we learn from this overall hearing? Well, there's some ugly text messages, and that's it. I don't think anyone learned any more information about Shanna Gardner's involvement, alleged involvement, or non-involvement in this case, other than there were some bad text messages, who we now find out were as a result of many of them in jest, taken out of context. And if that's all you have, so what do you do next? You manufacture a case. And I'm not saying that we're at that point yet, but I see very, very potentially harmful things along the horizon, such as having meetings and not recording them, having meetings and not doing police reports, and not disclosing favorable evidence to the defense. As early as yesterday, the prosecutors turned over more additional statements that were allegedly made by KJ at this secret meeting, many of which KJ even denies that were ever said. And KJ also says were taken completely out of context and spun in a direction that was wholly inappropriate. When prosecutors don't have a case, these are the things that are done. And I will tell you what happens next. When you don't have evidence and you have a case like this, the next inclination is to go out and get yourself a jailhouse snitch. So I presume that's being done right now. There's a little shopping that might be going on or might not be. But as a result, what we have done is we are sending a letter to the elected state attorney in this case, Melissa Nelson, and we're going to, and as well as law enforcement in this case, advising them that Shanna Gardner is represented, and they are not to send in any agents of the state to try and go in who are actually trying to make a deal for themselves and trying to better their current situation while in jail to be able to hurt and harm Shanna Gardner in a death penalty case. That's a textbook move, and we are calling them out. And I'm telling you right now, if that happens in the future, you will be able to go back at this moment and you'll be able to know and see that I was absolutely 100% correct. So watch out for that. That's coming next. And
You cannot have, under any circumstances, a police officer lying in a court of law, lying to a judge.
Fuck
who has to make
yeah.
a critical decision to hold someone while in custody. Everybody forgets.
Yes.
Shanna Gardner has a child who's terminally ill. You have this child who may not live, being completely torn away from his mother while she waits. Could be a year, could be 2 years, could be even longer for trial, and for which you're seeking the death penalty. The stakes couldn't be higher. And in fact, the actual conduct couldn't be more egregious. This is not something this community should stand for. When they elected Melissa Nelson, they should have expected her to hold her standards, her prosecutors to a heightened standard for which they can fully work within the public trust. And that doesn't mean violating agreements while maintaining attorney-client privilege materials, for which this court has even acknowledged was poor judgment. And now we have this, withholding favorable evidence
I get it
from
when
the
you're not
defense prior to a critical hearing, and then later.
You know what shows me, guys? We just like assume like, hey, cops must be right. Cops must do the right thing. Blah blah blah. Like that's what like my whole life. I've never been told my whole life, right? But then I start like, I'm an educated person. I can read things. I can see things. I can put things together. It is no different. A cop not doing their job is the same thing as that Kohl's employee that you have to go to work with. And you're just like, God damn, I stock more shit. And because they're just fucking horse playing or doing something stupid. Copland is no different, man. No different. Okay. They lie like the Kohl's employee lies. Okay. They are no different. But they should be, because they should be held to a completely higher standard of human being. You are hiring a standard of a human being when you are hiring somebody to become a police officer. And it just, when I would hear people say they're not going to college because they don't think they're going to make it in college or they're not good, blah, 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 and then they're going to go in law enforcement, it's like, wait, what? I personally think that cops should have to go and get a 4-year criminal justice degree. You know why? Dedication. It shows that you can get through 4 years. At the very least, I want you to have 2 years, with your associates. But you have to have people that know how to write a report. You have to have people that know how to communicate, right? Take some communications classes. But think about this. A cop just can go to like the academy. What's the academy? Think about it. So like, I don't want uneducated motherfuckers being police officers. Go get some education. Okay. And it's just, ugh. But Johns lied his fat fucking ass off in that room. And Jose Baez called his own press conference. Okay. Got on those stairs, his own. He never does this. He is outraged because think about how long he's been doing this. And he's like, well, you had no idea that I'd ever be on this case. Just like when I get a case and people are like, well, I had no idea that Lana Oriani was going to come along and just like shatter it. But I don't care can you imagine if Shanna Gardner had a public defender? Can you imagine if, I don't even know who Mario Saldana has. Henry Tennant. I mean, like, it just,
They're on afterwards, doing it again even more. As recently as yesterday, we got more statements that allegedly occurred during the secret meeting that was non-recorded. So, folks, I employ all of you who are here to, we're trying to do our job. We want you to ask the tough questions.
Yes.
Don't take the guided tour.
Don't take the guided tour.
Not as simple and as open and shut.
Yes.
It has been laid out to be.
And I've been telling y'all.
One side of this case, and what's coming out of it reeks. And I think all of you, it's your journalistic responsibility to seek out and ask them, why are you putting on a police officer who's lying on the stand?
Yes.
Why are you allowing that to happen? Why aren't you recording meetings with very important critical witnesses?
God, I want to hear it again.
One side of this case during the secret meeting that was non-recorded. So, folks, I employ all of you who are here to, we're trying to do our job. We want you to ask the tough questions. Don't take the guided tour. this case is not as simple and as open and shut as it has been laid out to be. You have only heard one side of this case, and what's coming out of it reeks. And I think all of you, I think it's your journalistic responsibility to seek out and ask them, why are you putting on a police officer who's lying on the stand? Why are you allowing that to happen? Why aren't you recording meetings with,
Oh my God.
with very important
Gotcha.
critical witnesses? Why are you?
I got you, YouTube. Haha. Guess what, guys? They are not lighting up my name. My name does not have the red circle around it when I'm live. Like it should. I knew it. I fucking knew I would get to the bottom of it, and I just did. Sorry. Breaking news in Lana Oriani's case. Literally, there'd be a red circle around my name. Take a look at this. Okay, there should be a red circle around my name. Me being live right now. Me being live right now. And there's not a red circle around my name. That's why people aren't clicking on this, because it's not even saying that red circle. That's what you do and that's what you see. You pieces of shit. I'm coming for that ass. I'm coming for that ass. Yeah. Because Lana Oriani makes way too much motherfucking sense. Flex on them. I will fuck you up. Bang, bang. Okay. Right there. That should have a red big old circle around it. And it doesn't. Why? You know how? Get the fuck up out of here, man. Sick fucks.
You're not getting these statements completely locked down. And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you there's a very good reason. And the reason is an obvious one. So I would ask that all of you, and even those who are listening, to seek out and ask these questions and hold them to their level of professionalism. And I can tell you this, it gives me no pleasure to stand here and do this. None whatsoever. I hate it. Hate it with every being, every part of my being. But I will do it. I will fulfill my oath as an officer of the court and as the lawyer who's been entrusted with Shanna Gardner's life. They're not going to get away with lying in the courtroom. We're not going to stop until we seek justice in this case. They're not going to get away by creating evidence.
Yes.
We're not going to allow that to happen in this case.
Fuck yeah,
I
neither am I,
hope
bitch. Let's go, Jose.
If there's any ambiguities, that they clear them up immediately.
Next
That
flight
they
I'm
explain
taking.
why
Next
they
to the
didn't record that
motherfuckers.
meeting, why they didn't file a police report on that meeting, why
Come get yourself
Detective
some.
Johns is lying about speaking to a person when in fact he actually did.
Gotta shut me up,
Lying as to why
motherfucker.
she changed her number when in fact she still to this day has not changed her number. There's no reason any of these things could have had to have occurred in this case. If they really have a case, if their case is as open and shut as they say it is, to the
Yes.
point where they're confident enough to seek the ultimate penalty of death,
Yeah, if it's so open and shut, what's the
then
problem?
none of this should be going on.
Yeah,
None of
show
this.
it.
And the fact that they expect us
Yes.
to stand by and let it occur just isn't
Yes.
going to happen.
Yes.
Just is not going to happen.
Hell yeah, Jose.
Heard
Say it
one
again.
side of this case, and what's coming out of it reeks.
Reeks.
And I think all of you, I think it's your journalistic responsibility.
It is our
to seek
journalistic
out and ask them,
responsibility.
why are you putting on a police officer who's lying on the stand?
Yeah.
Why are you allowing that to happen? Why aren't you recording meetings with very important critical witnesses? Why are you not getting these statements completely locked down? And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you there's a very good reason. And the reason is an obvious one. So I would ask that all of you, and even those who are listening, to seek out and ask these questions and hold them to their level of professionalism. And I can tell you this, it gives me no pleasure to stand here and do this. None whatsoever. I hate it. Hate it with every being, every part of my being. But I will do it. I will fulfill my oath as an officer of the court and as the lawyer who's been entrusted with Shanna Gardner's life. They're not going to get away with lying in the courtroom. We're not going to stop until we seek justice in this case. They're not going to get away by creating evidence. And we're not going to allow that to happen in this case. I certainly hope that if there's any ambiguities, that they clear them up immediately, that they explain why they didn't record that
Take
meeting,
these motherfuckers
why they
down.
didn't file a police report on that meeting, why
Yes.
Detective Johns is lying about speaking to a person when in
Yes.
fact he actually did.
Yeah, you
lying
sick
as to
fuck.
why she changed her number when in fact she still
She
to this day
didn't?
has not changed her number.
2014,
There's
she's the
no
same
reason
number.
any of these things could have had to have occurred in this case if they really have a case.
If they really have
If
a
their
case.
case is as open and shut as they say it is, to the point where they're confident enough to seek the ultimate penalty of death, then none of this should be going on. None of this. And the fact that they expect us to stand by and let it occur just isn't going to happen.
No.
It's not going to happen. And I ask that all of you ask the tough questions. And by all means, if you want to ask me questions, I know
Let's
Mr.
go
Mizrahi
through the
left.
transparency.
You know, he doesn't want to answer to his actions.
Yeah,
So
he left. Look
it
at,
is what it
look
is.
Look at you see
Perhaps he had another matter, and you're right. In fact, he does. So I take that back.
See how good he is though? He took it back. He's like, where's that prosecutor at? Listen,
None of this. And the fact that they expect us to stand by and let it occur just isn't going to happen. Just is not going to happen. And I ask that all of you ask the tough questions. And by all means, if you want to ask me questions, I noticed Mr. Mizrahi left. You know, he doesn't want to answer to his actions. So it is what it is. Perhaps he had another matter, and you're right. In fact, he does. So I take that back.
Yeah.
The reality is
that's when you know somebody. That's when you have integrity right there on the spot. I take that back. You know what? He did have somewhere else to go. Okay. And you know what? Maybe Jose didn't even know that, but he went ahead and said it because, you know, he's like, I shouldn't even said that, you know? But when you want to talk about somebody that is not going to like admit that they're wrong, or he just did it right there. Okay. Jose Baez is fired up. He wants everybody that's a true journalist to get their fucking asses out here and do something. Well, that's me. Oh, let's talk about some cops. Let's talk about cop land. I'm here for it.
you need to ask him, Ms. Stifler, or Melissa Nelson these tough questions.
Miss-
And I think they owe the public answers,
Yeah, they
especially
do.
if they're putting on such type of evidence.
Mr. Baez, I was just hoping to get some clarity. What specifically are you requesting in this motion? Is it a consideration of the bond? And
Well-
two, how did you learn that this witness? How did you learn the additional context this witness?
Sure.
provided?
Well, it's all laid out in our motion, so you'll be able to see it. But I will tell you this.
Check out the motion.
First off, we learned about it because they were watching the hearing. And that specific witness, the first thing she did is she hired a lawyer. And that lawyer then contacted us. We were since able to obtain a sworn affidavit. And in fact, we even have the phone records from when Detective Johns actually called her. So there's no getting out of this one.
There's no getting out of this one.
And in addition
What's
to that,
up, bitch?
both witnesses
I love
submitted
being
affidavits
fired up.
clarifying their position and basically saying that these statements were completely
I
taken
love
out
that
of
people hate
context
me, too.
and that are completely
It
utterly
really gets me
false.
fired up.
So filing this motion, what is your expectation or request of the court?
We're requesting the court has numerous and broad discretion in a situation like this. She can dismiss the case. She can dismiss the state attorney's office and disqualify them. As we know, this is not their first brush with incidents in this case. And she can also give us reconsideration for the bond hearing for which we're asking. We're asking for Shanna Gardner to be released. And that, of course, is one of the remedies that we're seeking
And
as
the
well.
individuals that have come forward that would allow you to file this motion, they would speak publicly if necessary?
If subpoenaed to testify, they would testify to the truth of what they're saying, yes.
Yeah.
There have been
Fuck
sessions in
yeah.
this case to talk about discovery and things like
Damn, I love it, you guys. This is going to be so fucking amazing. I told you guys, this case is not what you guys think. This case is not what it looks like. But I want to know why so bad they went like, again, when somebody's just so guilty, guys, you don't got to do any of this shit. They're just guilty, you know? Just, we're going to get them the right way. We're going to like do it the right way and you got no problems. But you have to ask yourselves this. And it's when, like Jose says, when you have to do all of this, something is wrong. Something reeks. And so I will be live tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 2 hours from now. Make yourself known. But this case, trust me, people are going to be all over there. Like, does Jared deserve justice? Absolutely. Okay. But his kids, their dad was shot, murdered, whatever, everything. That he's never coming back, right? Now you want to try to take their mom out of their lives, right? Okay. And paint her as the mastermind behind this. Well, what if she wasn't? Okay. All right. What if she wasn't? Also, because the kids are so young, this is a death penalty case. They're seeking death penalty. Maybe you guys should ask those kids what they think about that. You know, they're victims too. They're the ultimate victims, right? Ask them what they think about that. We'll see you guys tonight, 7 p.m. front row. Let's do this. This is out of Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Trust me, I want justice for Jared, but we have to do it the right way. And we have to make sure the right people that truly did this and what their involvement was, you know. But when you do stuff that isn't on the right end of, like, you got to do things right the whole time. You got to do things right when people aren't looking. And that's integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's watching. And Detective Johns, in my opinion, is not that man, which then everything comes in question, which would be the confession of Henry Tenon, to me, is now in question because of Stifler and Detective Johns's actions with everything else. Talk to you guys on the flip side. See you at 7. Thank you, moderators, subscribers, members. Much love and peace to all of you guys. Share this shit wherever you can. If you have community pages, but something's going on and they're trying to not let anybody know when I'm live. All right. Bye-bye now.